right side of the room is going to be out today.
Oh, that's right, Kate, because
Kayla's out. He has family in from overseas.
Maybe we'll finish. I thought you were going to say maybe we'll finish. Yeah, I have Bugs Bunny keys.
No, mermaid.
Only the mermaid. Okay.
So
Maybe we
gonna start?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, let's start.
Yeah, we're live.
Say again?
We're live. Hi, internet.
You're recording everything, yes?
I just started recording.
I know, but which one? I know you record the first one,
I record everything. Everything's on YouTube.
but it is there.
You can more or less make it out.
Cool. Okay.
But there shouldn't be that much board work for this week.
Okay,
Oh
cool.
wait, next week we'll get back to some.
Lesson 2. We're on lesson 2.
Yeah, we're on lesson
Lesson
2.
two.
We had just talked about, I believe, I think we'd gotten up to here.
So these images, they always the same. This is like some kind of standard that they always the same.
The
There
icons?
was something about
Yeah,
triangle or something.
Yeah,
that
so
you
so
when it's a question or change,
Yep.
there's a diagram.
yeah, so they're fairly
Decisional.
The slide deck that you sent out, is it in color? Because some of the pictures are in color, like in the diagram, and I couldn't catch them all.
yeah, the color shouldn't matter.
Okay.
Color shouldn't.
There was nothing about that green belt. There was nothing. It was just this one question about decision.
Oh.
There are always these like limit of the question, like 15 or from this category.
Yeah, and that's a good point. If you look in the back of the book, under the body of knowledge, it'll tell you how many questions are from each area.
Yeah. So I know I failed the final, the final child. I win. I know I win. No, but the worst one for me was, it was too much,
Mhm.
plus exam, and of course when I studied from the beginning, and I really liked it.
Okay, well,
And it's just the end was just killer.
every question's worth the same amount. The question 1 and question 150 are all worth the same amount.
I know, but
It's funny how that works.
with this one, like you said, we have 2 minutes. There's no time.
You have no time. There is not enough time on this exam. I wish I could tell you there was, but
But I'm
there's.
getting closer to the idea that I'm gonna take it in January.
I'm going to take it in January. I don't want to
was
rush
hoping,
through
like,
this.
some will take and then we will finish.
So what you really should do is have someone take it at the beginning of the testing period and like report on it, and then take it at the end of the testing period.
Say again?
Well, the testing period is pretty wide. It's from like September 15th through October 15th. So you should pay someone to take it on September 15th, and then tell you what was on it.
Since I'm going to Poland, I'm going to be like 2 weeks out.
No, it's all to you. It's all up to you.
Because I really want to go to the video and go to the test bank. So when you told us last time that January is the option.
Yep, January is an option.
Maybe do this in January.
But I would make sure you get your application in and just.
But it must be now. Application.
No, the application for that is October, I think.
December something.
I
Might
think
be.
you said December 7th.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, that seems reasonable.
But
It's on the ASQ website.
There's just this $400 that I wish to spend in Poland.
You can just give me the $400. I'll gladly.
It is $3.99 or $3.39, something like that.
I'll gladly take the money off your hands. You can just hand it to me, and I'll put it to good
When do
use.
you find out your
Thanksgiving.
Oh.
The week before Thanksgiving, I get the bar results.
Sure.
Yeah, you guys are complaining that you have to wait a week.
I know, but you probably will, listen, you are the expert in test taking.
I'm not the expert in test taking, but I'm an expert in taking this test. And the way that you fail this test is you don't finish this test. So you need to be able to triage the exam. And I keep coming back.
Triage, what is it?
Triage, to be able to look at it and be able to divide it up into those things that you should put your resources in and those things you shouldn't be able to you don't need to put your resources in.
Like what I usually do is I just start reading through the questions. If it's something that I can answer quickly, I'll answer it. And
I know, but
then,
then again.
I
it's
come
like,
back to
it's
the
like some question is obvious and I mark and then just doubt, okay, shoot, it's too easy. Maybe
So if I
should-
doubt it,
shoot.
if I start doubting it, then I just skip it.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do, just right away.
Because then you'll definitely get back to
But
it. You're
I
not gonna
want
remember to get back
study
to
this
it.
time from the end of it. Okay, I don't wanna talk.
Yeah, also as it relates to the test, good thing for you to know is the first page and the last page are the easiest set of questions on the entire exam. Because that's what the
Okay, but
psychometricians
how do
say.
we know first page, last page? It's computerized.
Well, I have no idea the computerized version. I know on the hard paper version that was true. I don't know what they're doing with the computerized. I don't think that's probably built in the algorithm. The algorithm is probably just drawing 25 questions and spitting them out for each.
But again, the same idea, they will neither be the same that they were somewhere else in the, they were not.
I know there's the test bank that they're drawing from has about 500 questions in it. So each question,
Could be repeated, so there
well,
is
it's not going to be repeated on your test, but it might be repeated on Dimple's test.
Okay, so there is, so this means you can have different and I could have different.
Yeah, that's actually more likely than not, is that each of you is going to have a different administration of the exam. So your question 32 might be her question 123,
That's not the problem.
or she might not even get asked the question.
But then, if there is like a, maybe this is a naive question, there's not like a bank of questions that
They haven't released it. There is a bank of questions, but it's not released to us. So we don't know exactly what the 500 are going to be.
because it was something for $600 or $700. I don't know if this is going to work.
It's probably not. You have access to the ASQ test bank through my account, just kind of like you did with the green belt. Some of you probably stumbled into the black belt.
I don't want to pay additionally because it's just like a test. You know how many things you can memorize.
Well, you don't have to memorize anything. Remember, it's open book, open notes.
2 minutes. Answer 2 minutes.
Actually, do you even have 2 minutes? It's 150 questions.
I have to
How many?
organize
It's 4
myself the way
hours,
Yeah,
I
it's
right?
organize.
240 questions, 240 minutes for 150 questions.
I know.
So you don't have 2 minutes. You have under 2 minutes a question.
Yeah, I waste a lot of time searching. I know, I remember the slides about it. I wasn't sure where is the section. So I wasn't sure if it's in 2 or 8 or 9.
But see, so that's why I do this,
Yeah.
right? Because I can skim it quickly and then,
So, but
and I do this.
what you actually have here, it's just like a list of.
Yeah, so in lesson 1, we did what's a process, type of stats, the lean toolkit, like here we did.
Something that
Cypher.
means something to you, like
Yeah.
you will know, okay, this is my.
But it's pretty much going
yeah.
through this, right? Like
Yeah,
value
yeah,
stream
I
mapping.
have to like see it right away and just go for it.
Yeah,
Because I know that.
because even this
slides are
isn't like,
perfect. They have all these answers. You just have to find the right
yeah,
one.
that's why I did this. And then here it's more detailed. You can actually, like the chart, the diagram he had, that has an asterisk on it, you know.
Let's go.
Okay, so what did we talk about last class?
So,
We talked about a lot of things last class, namely, they have names. Again, it is perfectly acceptable for you to read it off the slides. And that's actually encouraged for the very point that you had just noticed, is that part of the challenge for this exam is having your notes organized in a fashion that you can remember what's in which slide deck, what is in which packet. So what did we talk about?
We did the history, we did definition of a process.
value stream.
Okay, so we then went into process mapping, right? And we talked about the lean version of process mapping. We didn't quite get through all of it, but we talked about the Six Sigma process mapping. And we talked a little bit about the SIPOC diagram, right?
And internal, external customer.
Yep. And the importance of being able to identify all of those customers. So we talked about that. So in the SIPOC diagram, we talked about how the procedure to do it. And I emphasized the point that for every input, there needs to be a supplier. And for every output, there needs to be a customer. So what you're doing in the SIPOC diagram is you're trying to create this high-level picture of what it is that you do. You're trying to detail and explain to someone just walking in off the street, hi, here's what we do. We take these inputs that come from these suppliers, that produce these outputs that go to these customers, and here's how we get those inputs to become those outputs through those 5 or 6 macro steps.
But it's just amazing. I know this is at work. You don't communicate. People assume they know, and they don't see the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
They
And-
don't communicate. It's always like this gap. But I'm not seeing this.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, and that's one of the things that you see in when you transition over to value stream mapping is how, we'll get to this. I'll just skip up to that slide.
They should really, you know, we have this training for employees.
Absolutely, and many companies do invest in that, and the quality of that training is sort of hit or miss. It's not as great as mine because, well, it's not as delivered by me, and mine just happens to be the best because, well, it's mine. But what you're talking to really is this issue of the discrepancy between the material flow and the information flow, or how your processes are running, and people inside this individual processes have a pretty good understanding of what's going on, but they don't understand how they connect. And there really isn't a good flow of information throughout the organization. So that's one of the things that you have when you actually do your value stream map, is you're looking at not only the process itself, so the actual steps that are being performed, but you're also looking at how that information is being exchanged, how that information is being communicated. And that could be in forms of, could be in a formal ERP, MRP system, where you have this really cool, complicated computer system that's trying to balance out your production orders and do all sorts of neat things. Or it could just be a piece of paper that moves along with the material as it's manufactured. Or it could just be, Mary goes, tell us, Bob, what's going on. Or the plant manager goes and wanders down and says, hey, how's everything going today? Or at the law firm here, we get a report every day. That's basically, here's what you have due within the next 3 days. Please get it done. And if you don't have it done, you get another lovely email saying, you're supposed to have this done. Why didn't it get done? And that goes to the shareholders here. So it could be as low tech as that, where it's just a matter of a report that comes out daily that everyone looks at. It could be just going and talking about the process, or it could be the actual communication, the understanding within the process of the individual operators.
People, they don't understand. That's why they think that doesn't.
Praise them.
Yes, this is not for me.
Yeah.
It is for you.
Absolutely, and you can look within any system, and I've had this happen in manufacturing where you run multiple shifts, and first shift doesn't talk to second shift, doesn't talk to third shift.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And everybody's saying, this is my job. I'm thinking, I'm only doing my job. But this is pointless because somebody else doesn't know what you're doing.
Absolutely, and that's I sort of one of my things against people that work in quality is I think all quality departments should go away. Because when you have, and I made Dimple
Yeah, they
smirk there.
always say
Oh my God.
At my company, they say the quality must be included in the process.
Yeah,
And it must be everyone's job.
That's it.
because when you're making it, like, you can't have it caught at the end,
Yeah.
right?
It's too late.
Yeah.
You have to have this auditors, and
But-
people who are.
Well, I don't think you need the auditors because, as we'll talk about this in a couple of
Yeah.
slides, is that auditors are non-value added. They don't change the fit, the form, or the function in a way that your customer is willing to pay for, right?
But they also have this reviewer.
Correct, but if you did it right the first time and you knew you did it right
Yeah.
the first time, you wouldn't need them,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to what's value added, non-value added, we'll talk about that in 2 slides from now. But that stuff's non-value added. But as it relates to what I was saying regarding my sort of philosophy that quality departments should go away, is particularly coming from manufacturing, more of a business side of things, it's very easy to say if you have a quality problem, that's his problem, he's the head of quality, go fix it, right? Or her, whoever, you can go point at the quality department when we have a quality problem. Except it's never really quality's problem when there's a quality
And
problem,
they there.
right? It's always a breakdown in somewhere else, right?
The problem is somewhere else.
Correct, but when you have a quality department, it's very easy to point at someone and say, go fix the quality problem because you're the quality problem. And it really stops you from identifying what the true root cause is, and that's wherever the thing actually broke. Where it be in the design phase and the execution phase, somewhere in the process it broke down. It didn't break down in quality, quality just found it, right? It's like yelling at the umpire when the pitcher didn't throw a strike. It's like, we didn't make you throw the ball out of the strike zone. Or like arguing a speeding ticket. It's like, it's not the cop's fault that he looked at the radar gun and you were going 10 miles over the speed limit. You were going over 10 miles over the speed limit and he happened to look at his radar gun. It's really not his fault or her fault. I'm having trouble with my genders today. So what we're doing in value stream mapping, and this is one of the nicer things that value stream mapping has that that the Six Sigma process mapping doesn't necessarily have, is that idea of looking at the material flow and looking at the information flow. Because a lot of times certain companies will have a good understanding of what's going on with their material, how the metal is moving through their process, or how the paperwork is routing through, or how a case is being handled at a law firm, how that's being handled. They have a pretty good understanding of that. And at the end of the day, what's the deliverable to the customer is the thing, is the tangible item. So if that gets to the customer, everyone's happy. So a lot of companies will have a good understanding of how the raw material goes through some sort of process, be it transactional, be it manufacturing, and ends up as a deliverable to the customer. But where there starts to be a disconnect often with companies is they don't really look at how that information is being communicated through various steps in the process. So how does the downstream process know what's going on with the upstream process?
There was a question about it. When you wait, you don't do it, just you wait. There was a question about that.
Well, yeah.
I
And
remember a lot more than I do. I don't know.
I work in the upstream and downstream.
absolutely. So an example of this was when I was working at American Standard, and we were doing, through a benchmarking exercise, we realized that we had 3 factories in Mexico that were all manufacturing toilet tanks, right? And they manufacture them different colors, different sizes, different configurations, but at the end of the day, it was a toilet tank. And we looked at our efficiency across those 3 facilities, and we saw that one of our facilities was 2.5 times more efficient than our lowest performing facility. 2.5 times doing the same thing. So the number of units per man hour was 2.5 times more in one facility than the other one. So Aguas Calientes, Mexico was able to put 2.5 times, let's go the other way.
Quicker.
2.5 times quicker than their counterparts in Mexico City.
Then because
Well, I have no idea, but I'm like, what the hell, right? It's the same geographic environment. They're doing pretty much the same thing. Though the tanks were sold at different price points, the assembly was exactly the same, right? It had a lever, it had some valves inside of it, same amount of everything went to a box went to another box. It was all the same steps, but one place was much more efficient at it than the other. So first thing I did is I went and looked at the process and like, oh, there's an extra guy. At the time I could read and write and I could speak enough to be proficient.
But even without speaking, you kind of figure it out.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take language to be able to say, there's 3 of you here, there's 2 of you there. So, but we actually had to show a video of the other guys to convince the shop stewards, the union reps in the Mexico City, that it's possible to do with 2 guys. You don't need 3 guys. So as soon as we removed that extra guy, we saw a nice improvement. But that didn't get us all the way there, right? We were able to get close. Then the next exercise was to do kind of a 5S analysis, like look at the packaging and assembly line in Mexico City was a complete mess. So we cleaned it up. We saw a nice incremental improvement, but that didn't get us there either. So then we had this nice team of interns. It was kind of nice. And the nice thing about interns is you don't have to pay them much, right? You actually weren't paying them anything, and you can make them do the stuff you don't want to do, right? I once at a conference was telling this story, and I referenced them as slaves and got in major trouble for calling them slaves, but they're basically slaves. You can make them do the stuff you didn't want to do. So
funny thing, they don't even know about that. They are so exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a nice give and take between interns. It's been providing them an opportunity. There's absolutely a balance there. But I had a team of interns that I could use to do stuff I didn't want to do. So I plopped one of these interns on the line in Mexico and just told in Mexico City and told him just to, actually one was him, one's her, to go and write down everything that doesn't make sense. So every time something weird happens, write it in the book. So I had them do this for a week on all 3 shifts. And I ended up with a binder about twice as thick as your book. All their observations, all in Spanish. And I started to read through these and was like, oh crap, we got a problem. Part of the problem was the way the data was being collected is that one would say that they ran out of a part, one would say, describe something else, and they're all in these long narrative forms, and there was no real way to unpack the data. And the only thing I had was this big, thick binder that pretty much said, oh crap, we got problems. So the next step was trying to figure out how do we collect some sort of more meaningful data to like figure out what the hell is going on. But the one thing I was able to extract from the binder of thick stuff is there was a lot of stuff that was going wrong that was stopping the line from producing, that they would stop to go do something. What the something was, the guy could be going to the bathroom, who the hell knows, but the line was stopping for some reason. So was like, okay, well, Six Sigma kind of teaches you to get the data, right? To get the data, look at the data, draw some conclusions from the data. I was like, okay, well, what data can we possibly have? And it turned out our ERP MRP system had a functionality that when the thing, this was the final packaging and assembly line, so the last step in the process was it got moved into our finished goods inventory. And it turned out there was a nice timestamp associated when it was entered into the finished goods inventory. So it's like, okay, that's some data we can use, and we have good data on it. Like when it ended up in a box and was ready to go into our finished goods inventory. Okay, so then I was like, okay, if I look at the time between successive items going into inventory, I'll know how long it took them to package the thing, right? So if I know when the first part went in the box, and know when the second part went in the box, and I subtract, I know how long it took to put the second part in the box, right? And then I was like, okay, I can look over that, and I can compare that to what they're supposed to do, what their takt time is. Remembering that takt is the amount of time that's needed to do what? No.
One.
Nope, try again. So takt has a very particular concept. It came up in our lean, we introduced it. It's the heartbeat of the process, it's the drum beat. It is the rate of production that is needed to satisfy your customer. So it's how many parts per hour, per minute you need to produce to satisfy your customer. So I knew it.
It's quantity, not quality.
It's time. It's time per unit.
Kind of.
It's exactly. It's an interval. Exactly.
It's like a doom.
Exactly. That is exactly what takt is. Yes.
So between the doom, what you doing?
Exactly. So I knew I had to have a doom every. If I recall, I think it was like every 4 minutes that piece had to be in a box or something akin to that. I don't recall. It was a couple years ago. I don't remember the exact number. Somewhere around 4 minutes, and they were pretty good. So I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. So I worked with our IT department to create a report that would go through this database and would look at all of the data from the differences in the dooms. And if it took longer than 4 minutes or whatever the time was, it would flag it. And then I instructed the supervisors that if there was a point that took longer than their target takt time, well, they would have to explain it before they would be released for the day. So we tried this for about a week, and it failed miserably, absolutely miserably. So these guys were working 12-hour shifts, and before they could get released from the shift, they had to go fill out paperwork on why this piece didn't get in a box. It took them 7 minutes to put the piece in the box instead of 4 minutes. Any idea why that would have failed miserably? Well, it was everything was in Spanish, right? Yep, I wasn't involved in this. This was just their line supervisor and the frontline operators.
I don't know. They didn't die.
So what they got is they got a little graph that had little dots on it and the time that the dot occurred, where it was over the target takt time, kind of like a control chart. So what they'd get is a report at the end of the shift that would be like.
Is that manually generated?
No, it was generating itself. So we had the data, we had the timestamp data from our database, our manufacturing system when we worked into finished goods inventory, and then all it had to do was subtract. So we had our takt time here, and we'd have like dot, and then we'd have a dot up here, and 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 this would be from like 7 a.m. through 1900.
Out on the phone. If someone is watching.
Yeah, it's on the board. They can see it.
They see it?
I think so. I can zoom in a little bit.
I'm gonna see this later on, so I would like to know.
That's fine. So we can see that we have little dots here for each one of the parts that are popping out every 4 minutes thereabouts. So this was time. This was time. All right. So how long it took them to get a piece in the box. And before they could go home for the day, they had to explain what happened here, what happened here, what happened here, what happened here, what happened here. But this was going. Well, they're the ones that did it, right? They packaged the part.
There's so many parts there, so how are they gonna know?
Well,
I don't remember what
Was
every
like
minute of my day.
exactly. Well, that was part of the problem I didn't account for, right?
7 a.m., 19, 12 hours.
Yeah. Well, they're working 12-hour shifts.
Yeah.
So I'm asking him what happened right when his shift started at 7:05.
Yeah.
Is he going to remember at 7 p.m. what the hell happened? No. So that was one of the problems. Also, I was having them do this at the end of the shift, and they couldn't go home until they did this paperwork. They didn't want to do the paperwork. First, and also as a factor I didn't quite consider when I came up with this,
You
these.
didn't know there's gonna be so many issues.
Oh, I knew there. I had the big binder. I knew there was lots of issues, but I wanted to at least have an understanding of what the actual issue was from the guys who were doing it, so I could make the data more useful. So the other thing I didn't consider when I was doing this is these are operators that don't have much education, and them doing paperwork is not something they do. These are not paperwork guys and gals. They don't like paperwork. But what was kind of funny is while this pilot program was running, this pilot ran for about 2 weeks. Actually, it got cut short because the operators sort of revolted. I had gone to my higher ups and I basically told them, I got this really cool system. I'm using these statistics to describe what's going on, and we're going to be actually get to the root cause of this. And then I had to go back with my tail between my legs to basically say, yeah, that failed miserably. And it failed miserably because the operators couldn't remember what had happened 12 hours ago, just the nature of being a human. That they also had this issue of like wanting to go home and not do paperwork. Plus, you had guys and gals that just don't like doing paperwork. So that failed miserably. But I thought I was onto something, right? I thought I was onto something here, that I had a good data point. And that data point I could draw conclusions from. I just needed to get a better way to get the data to be collected closer to when it was happening. So what it turned out is the operators were scanning a barcode into a computer system when they were finished with it. That when they were moving the goods into finished goods, they scanned the barcode on the part to move it into finished goods. So what we did is we modified the software that was being used to scan that in, where if they broke the takt time, if they broke that 4-minute line, or whatever the actual number was, the system would lock up and wouldn't let them scan it. And then they would see a window that had man, machines, methods, or other on it, kind of modeled after the fishbone diagram. So if, for instance, they had stocked out of a particular material, meaning that they were out of box insert, they would poke at materials, and then they would see a list of all the possible materials they could be out of, and they'd poke at that. And then they could scan the barcode and proceed. Alternatively, if like the tape dispenser ran out of tape, or the airlines got gummed up so the stapler wasn't working, they could poke at machines, and then it would say staple gun or tape gun, or all the 5 or 6 machines they had to do their assembling. So now we actually were able to get some real meaningful data. And from that meaningful data, we were able to come up past the shortcoming of like when we had the interns write the binder, well, we had a lot of data, we just couldn't make it useful, right? When we had the supervisors running these charts at the end of the day, well, they looked cool. We were trying to look at the data was telling a story, but we really couldn't have actionable data because we couldn't get to the true root cause. But now we had nice bucketized data about what was going on. And since this was working really well, and what was cool about it was we saw that the overall cycle times, the average cycle times, were going down just because we put the software in. The operators were actually self-optimizing because they got annoyed when the screen popped up. So they were more conscious of when they were going to break their takt time just because the little window would pop up and they would have to go poke at it. So just by doing that, we saw an improvement. And what was cool about that is we then rolled it out to the other facilities, and we saw improvement there too, just because the operators would self-optimize, which is kind of cool. But then once we had the data from the 2 different facilities, our best performing and our worst performing, we then saw that the rates of stockouts for materials was much less at our better performing facility than our best performing facility. And we couldn't quite figure this out. It's like, look, you put the thing in a box, like, put the thing in the box. Well, it turns out, given our product mix at American Standard at the time, there were lots of different boxes for lots of different products, and there was very little standardization for sort of legacy issues. And it turned out the poor performing facility in Mexico City was doing a lot more mix. They were doing a lot more SKUs, a lot lower volume. So it sort of kind of makes sense that they were going to, well, need more stuff, and perhaps there's a greater chance of them stocking out on it. But the thing that didn't quite make sense to me was like, wait, the step just before final packaging and assembly is cooking in the kiln, and the thing cooks in the kiln for 26 hours. And everything that goes in one side of the kiln, by definition, needs to come out the other side, right? Put something into an oven, goes in one side, goes around the conveyor, it needs to pop out the other side. It'd be really cool if it didn't. In one order. But for the most part, everything that went in came out. So it's like, you have 26 hours to figure out what is coming. In 26 hours, you can't get the right packaging insert on the packaging line. You have 26 hours. You have over a day. Can't you figure this out? And it turned out the root cause was they didn't know what was going into the kiln. there was no information about what was going into the kiln. So once the package,
There was a different shift here than different shift.
oh, different
there.
shift, different people, different everything, right? There was a huge oven in between, continuously moving
There
kiln.
was not like a scheduling thing.
Correct. And what made matters even more complicated was there was a bunch of rework loops. So what was coming out of the kiln was sort of kind of random, because they would all due to rework loops would go through a different number of iterations to actually get in the kiln to get in the box. So what that demonstrated was that there was no information flow going from the guys loading the kiln to the guys at the end of the kiln. And the guys at the end of the kiln, well, didn't know what was going to be coming down the line, so they had whatever was sitting there. And the solution there was really to look at the information flow to make sure that when they loaded in the things in the kiln, the information was recorded, and that information was transmitted to the guys at the packaging line so they can go and pick up the boxes, make sure they had the proper materials at the end of the line. So what this kind of demonstrates is sort of the iterative aspect of it. And we had a pretty good understanding of the material flow, right? We knew stuff goes into the kiln, stuff comes out of the kiln. They couldn't get lost. But we really weren't focusing on how that information flowed, how that information was being communicated through our systems. And that also triggered into like when our warehouse guys would reorder the packaging inserts and that sort of thing. And that was that. So we had a pretty good understanding of the material flow, really awful understanding of the information flow. And that's one of the things that value stream mapping really highlights, is that need for the information flow, that need for the information to be exchanged as well as the material being exchanged. So also in the value stream mapping, what you're also going to be doing is you're going to identify your scoreboards for each one of the processing steps. So these are going to be the critical aspects of the process. So how do you know that a particular processing step is being executed correctly? It's like, it's the scoreboard. Are we winning? Are we losing? What are those key process parameters that are going to tell us that the process is running well today, it's running poorly today? So you're going to identify that in your value stream map. And then you're going to layer this back onto the same overall map that we've been drawing. So you can have like your yield rate, your scrap rate, etc. So at American Standard, each point of yield across Mexico was $1 million, and our yields were about 60%. So a little between 60 and 70%, depending on the product line. Okay, so also in your value stream map, you're going to be identifying your inventory points. So these are where you're holding inventory. So that could be all different forms of inventory. Your inventory doesn't necessarily need to be your raw materials, your finished goods inventory. It can also be your people standing around. Also, it could be your material as it's being shipped. So if you're doing overseas manufacturing, particularly in China or Southeast Asia, you pay for the goods when they hit the boat. So when the things hit the boat, you own them, you paid for them. So for the 6 to 8 weeks it takes to float across the Pacific Ocean, well, you own them. So that's 6 to 8 weeks worth of inventory you have floating on the ocean at any given time. That's assuming there's only one boat, but generally you're doing those constantly. So about every 2 weeks you have another 6 weeks of inventory that's just hanging out there on the ocean. But if we look to more of a service type industry, well, this is what do you do if you don't have customers that day? Starbucks has this problem quite a bit when it comes to excess capacity on their baristas. There's a major uptick in volume between 7 and 9 a.m. at Starbucks, right? But they can only, people like coffee in the morning on their way to work.
Yeah.
Kind of duh.
Then you stop.
Right, so but most people have to be at work more or less at 9 o'clock thereabouts, at least by 9. So they can only bring in baristas for 4 hours. So they need them for 2, but they have to pay them for 4. So what do they do with those baristas for those extra 2 hours? Do they either run short during their peak volume and annoy their customers, or do they pay an extra person or two to stand around for 2 hours when they just don't need that volume? What do you do?
Do you have to pay for 4 hours?
Yeah. Yep. So
No one will come for 4 hours.
exactly.
You pay like $7.
It doesn't make economic sense for the individual to come in for 2 hours.
Yeah, drive.
Exactly, or whatever
What
the
they do.
the minimum staffing is for 4 hours, and they basically have to pay someone for 2 hours to not be used at their optimal amount, but they need to figure out what that optimal amount is in light of the fact that they're paying someone for a period of time that they might not be being used at full utilization, but their cost of annoying a customer and having a customer not come back because the wait times or too long offsets that value. And sort of a complicated calculus. The other thing that you can think about is in service industries, you can think about like the fire department, right? Ideally, the fire department is never used, I think, but
So they train, they get ready.
yeah, but they're hanging out there.
Yeah.
They're a resource that is waiting for something to happen. So you can think about that as your IT departments, the guys who get the viruses off your computer. Well, if you get a virus on your computer, you sure as hell want them to be there, but hopefully you never see them. So that's another thing to think about your inventory, is that you can have inventory in people, not just stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, now we're up to one of my favorite things, and I like to rant about it, and you guys have heard the rant, but you're gonna hear the rant again because it's just one of my favorites.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
That form that we have to fill out for the black belt.
Yes.
So one of my improvement steps, I guess I'm thinking that I can use this or the critical path method to justify it. Would that something like that work?
Absolutely. Everyone's probably looked at their form, and you only get a box about yay big, right? It's maybe a paragraph about yay big. All you have to do in that box is explain the tools that you used.
Okay.
Even if you didn't know the name of the tool.
Because I'm thinking the critical path method, like you map out the manual process and the
Mhm.
and the automated process. I was thinking I could use like the critical.
Yeah, you can absolutely. If you're talking about a process that you drew a picture of, you can talk about it as you drew a process map. You then looked at the critical paths, so you did the critical path analysis. You then applied the theory of constraints to identify what your bottlenecks are. These are sort of the things that if you've ever gone through one of these exercises, you're going to do intuitively, and you just might not have known what the name was at the time.
Yeah.
Also, when you're doing that exercise, you probably are just intuitively going to identify the value-added and non-value-added steps. Because one of the things you notice that whenever you do a process mapping or value stream mapping exercise, there's at least one or two steps where it's like, why the hell do we do that? And even without any training or any just thinking about it, it's like, why do we make 6 copies of this thing?
Well, it would just be more manual effort versus automated,
Mhm.
right? So
Well, then
the
you can.
manual, let's say the manual method takes 5 minutes,
Mhm.
where the automated method takes about 30 seconds,
Mhm.
right? So that's what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely.
It's the time efficiency.
So that's one way of doing it. But then you have to make sure on your business case that you're making so you have a section where it's like the results in the business case at the end. So make sure that you do the math out and say that this saved.
We have this many cases,
Yeah, well,
this many follow-ups,
exactly.
and this how much
And
time.
this is how much time, and time times dollars, time times rate equals dollars. Just make sure you have the time times rate
the
equals
rate
dollars.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, we didn't implement the process, but it's gonna be implemented. no matter.
Absolutely.
Like, I put the thought forward.
You've done the project, and just make sure on your dates you don't have future dates, because that's one of the ways that will get your application rejected.
Yeah.
So be conscious of that when you're saying it. But make sure that you have a dollar at the end. That it's just take it and get to $270,000 or whatever the number is. Just do the math and make sure you can justify that calculation, because that's one of the things that they're really looking for. They're looking for that you, on the description, on the product stuff, that you describe some of the tools you used. So you did value stream mapping, you did process mapping, you did a SciPy diagram, you did an affinity diagram, you brainstormed, you did whatever. Then you collected some data, you looked at the data, and then you made the thing better by hopping on 1 foot. Fine. And as a result of hopping on 1 foot, you save 200 man hours. That's $30 an hour. Therefore, we save 60 grand. The end. That's all you have to do in that form.
Just remember that figures are recorded.
You can replay it, and what I
know,
recommend,
just highlight.
what I absolutely recommend is if you're really bored and want something to laugh at, you turn the sound off and you play it on YouTube at double speed, because you get to go like this.
When I don't look at the screen and I listen, makes a lot of sense.
Well, you're saying it make a lot of sense, so I'll take that. I'll take that as a victory. But it's a personal hobby of mine, particularly when I was bored in class. I would watch it with the sound off.
Let's continue.
Okay.
This is very interesting. I want to listen.
Okay, so what we're looking, well, this comes into you see listening to me as being value added. Other people actually watch me flailing and flapping my arms around like an idiot. That's value added. So it's part of the question in your value added analysis is value added to whom, right? What is value added to me about this course is going to be different than value added to you, which is going to be different than value added to Dimple.
Mm-hmm.
And you can think about this as related to any of your processes. So at Medtronic, we struggled with this, right? Because identifying who our customer was. Is our customer the guy in the, is our customer the patient on the operating table? Because if I'm the patient on the operating table, I really don't care about how the hell you did the thing. I care that it gets into me, it works, and I don't get an infection. That's all I care about.
Internal, external customer, you have to figure it out.
Well, you have to, even within your internal and external customers, there's different classes of them. Like what's important to the FDA, different than what's important to the patient, which is what's different to the doctor. So we can talk about this from our own lives and our own educational experiences. And you can think about how either when you graduated from university or when you graduated from high school, you are more valuable, right? So you can think about how much extra, there's all these studies that say how much a high school diploma is worth, how much a college degree is worth. And a high school diploma is worth about 13 grand, college diploma's degree is worth about 15 grand, thereabouts, depending on which study you look at. So that's obviously a reward to you. So that's definitely value added to you because you're definitely getting more money, right? And as some great musical philosophers would suggest, that you get more problems associated with that. That was remotely funny. More money, more problems. So we need this side of the room because this side of the room might get my jokes.
It's been a long day.
It's been a long day for everyone. I worked a full day too, but this is my fun. Okay, so if we look at value added in our own educational process, right? Education is a process. It's a verb and a noun. Educate me is a process. Educate you is a process. So if we were to look at that, and in the US, we have free education for 13 years, depending on what state you're in. In New Jersey, we have it for 13 years. From K to 12. 6, 9, 3. All right, and we have value added up here. And non-value added.
It says none?
Non. Yep.
Okay. I didn't know now.
Yep. VA and NVA.
Cool. Okay, and?
So we can look at the educating of you process as a process, right? So, but we can look at the customer of the education of you process. Well, let's back it up. What is the output of the education of you process?
I think getting a job.
Well, okay, employment is obviously an output, a hopeful output. It's a little bit, it's one step removed perhaps, but it's definitely an output. What else? You want to have some knowledge, right? Some skills, maybe? Ability to like
I
read
don't think they are on that level to know that.
Well, what do you?
To the school and they mean kindergarten, do they actually think about, I'm gonna learn something? Like, they don't even know what they're gonna learn.
Well, then their teachers aren't doing a very good job for them. That's one of my frustrations is in education in general. As you walk into a class and the professor or the teacher doesn't make clear to you at the end of this class, you will be able to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, it depends on the teacher. If you're giving
Absolutely.
the teacher, then you're not giving it.
Absolutely, but as in a project charter or anything related to that, and anything that relates to a process, you need to know where you're going, right? That's why on the first day of class, you guys take a pretest, because that shows you where you're going, right? It bothers you. It bothers you to the nth, but this is what it's doing: is it's showing you where you're going. It's informing you about where you're going. So at the end of this course, you should be able to get through this. So it's making it quite clear to you where this ultimately is going to lead you to.
I only like this explanation. This is my baseline. I kind of.
Okay, so we got you there. So when we're talking about the education of you process, well, you're stuck there for 13 years. What of those 13 years are value added? Well, it depends on who your customers are. And how do we know who our customers are? What our outputs are, right? So if I'm looking at it as the output is having useful skills, right? The logical customer for that is future employers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can look at what's value added in the education of you process from the perspective of future employers. So in this 13-year period, lots of time, right? Was any of that value added from the perspective of your future employer? Or in your case, your current employer, but your future employer at the time of graduation?
I think that they're looking for that high school degree. at
Okay.
minimum.
So in Dimple lens, from the employer's perspective, everything is non-value added until that instantaneous moment they confer you your diploma.
Yeah, because, I mean, you could get little jobs, right? Like, ice cream store, stuff like that, right? But if you're really looking for a career job, you
So-
would need to go to college, but
So-
that,
so
the
it's the
first stepping
infinitesimal.
stone is this, that stepping stone is the high school
But
degree.
it's interesting that also has to go like this. You cannot go to the third class or sixth
Right,
class
I
and then
mean,
come back. It's
Yeah,
just
no,
always
you
like
have to go
something-
incremental,
Yeah, yeah.
but a career place isn't gonna consider you unless you have a high school degree.
Mhm. And remember what value added is. It's anything that changes the fit, the form, or the function. So anything that changes the fit of you, so the fit, the form, or the function. So the fit is the physicality of it.
What was the fifth form in the function?
Yes, fit, that is value added. Anything that changes the way the
Uh-huh.
product fits, the form that it takes, or how it functions.
Oh, okay. Fifth form in the function. Okay. And
That's value added. So you can think about that from the perspective of an employer. So Dimple has suggested that the fit, the form, the function, well, the fit and the form absolutely have changed in you once you have been conferred that degree, that high school diploma, right?
Mhm.
The function of you probably hasn't changed at all, right? You're the same exact human being you are the day you wake up,
It's the perception, I think.
but just from your functionality as a human being, you're the same person you are that morning. And you walk over the stage, they hand you on a piece of paper, and you're the same person on the other side of the stage.
Okay.
You have the same functionality, but now you have this little piece of paper that someone's willing to pay you for. So Dimple suggested that only that instantaneous moment when you walk across the stage, they do the little dance, you shake hands, you get or as you go up in the ranks, they hood you, they smack you around a little bit, whatever happens on that stage.
And you can work at one time.
Yeah, you get that $13,000 thereabouts in salary increase. But we talked about the function of you. And there's certain functions that an employer needs from their employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
You generally need there to be some level of like literacy. And
Counting money.
well, counting money, but
One part of another.
or it's just a matter of being able to read your job instructions. So
Burn yourself of this.
well, not necessarily to that extreme, but you think about operation or production floor, there's generally a lot of information that's being presented to them. There's lots of instructions that are being given to them. They need to be able to understand them, process them, and be able to do it.
Yep.
So the question then becomes, well, did the education of you process, was that value added at the point in time when you gained that skill, right? So the belief, at least the one that I generally hear reported, is that the newspaper is somewhere around a 4th grade level.
Uh-huh.
Thereabouts is most newspapers, with the exception probably the New York Times, is written at a 4th grade level. So is it value added right at the 4th grade when you have that level of mastery, when you can read at a 4th grade level and therefore you can probably read every job instruction that's given to you?
But to who is this value added? To the-
Well, it's a future employer, right? I can now put you on I can now hand you.
Some, you have to know the instruction. You have to read the instruction. I don't understand what you're doing.
No, the issue here is it's a tough thing to think about, even when you're looking at a manufacturing process, is this value added, is this not value added? So if I'm an employer, I want my employees to be able to read. So when they gain the ability to read, that was a transformational step that made them more valuable to me. I had no interest in them if they couldn't read. Once they can read, I have some interest in them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was value added when they gained that skill.
Okay.
Also, when they could do basic arithmetic, probably add, subtract, multiply, divide. Somewhere around 5th grade, they could do basic 4 functions, so that would probably be value added to me on some level. So that's another way that a future employer might value the education of you process, right? So when you can do basic math, you have basic literacy, those are value added. And just because society says so, when you get that little piece of paper, I'm going to pay you more. Right? So those are probably 3 pretty big milestone events that are going to be value added from an employer perspective. But they're not the only customer of the education of you process. You're a customer of the education of you process. Now, this becomes a lot more interesting, right? Because this becomes into what your individual experiences were in that 13 years or thereabouts that you were forced to sit in a class and stare at the clock. And this comes into what you would have paid yourself to do, that you would pay yourself basically to do over again. That there was some aspect of it that you as a self-actualized being thought there was some value to. So Dimple, where in this process of 13 years of being stuck in school from approximately 5 to 18, did you enjoy it? Would you pay yourself to have done it over again?
Probably none, but.
None of it. None of it changed you and made you into the person you are today.
No, I think there was really some classes you enjoyed. Like I remember chemistry, I enjoyed.
Okay, so what was that?
I really enjoyed like math.
Maybe high school. I think high
I
school.
love like geography, geometry.
Okay.
I love this moment when we were.
Cool. So that was what in high school?
That's high
You're,
school.
No, it was like a 6 or 8.
You're 6?
grade, something like
Okay.
that.
Geometry, you really like that.
well, it depends on
I
school.
don't know.
She went in Poland. Everything's different over
Yeah,
there.
it's about night.
The first time when they told me about the pyramid
The shapes.
and the you know the square and the circle and the P and it was like so cool. And
Okay.
the triangle.
So Anna really liked
I love it.
liked geometry, and that was somewhere around here. Okay, so Anna would go back and do geometry again.
I like to study everything.
Okay. Dimple, you gonna go back in
Probably high school.
high school? You liked high school. What about high school?
Well, that's
Besides the boys.
no, not really. I guess that's where we get our core knowledge, right? That's where you decide what you want to do. It's really life altering because that's where you really decide what you want to do in college.
Okay. Well, I guess for some people, there's lots of people that go to college
Most, yeah.
that still don't figure out what. So, okay, so Dimple's going to make the entire 4 years of high school. They're all going to be value added. They changed the fit, the form of the function of you in a way that you would
Yeah.
change who you are today in a manner that you would be willing to go for again.
Okay, so where are you going?
Where am I going with this?
I don't know. So for me it's different and for someone else it's different. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay.
And it's subjective. And that's why it's so important to understand who your customers are. Because from one perspective, what's value added might not be value added to another customer. Even amongst your customers, if you were to classify them, if you were to stratify them into groups, they might not even agree on what's important. So if you're looking at developing a new product, or this comes into play a lot. So what some customers think are really important, think of a car, right? Some people will buy a car based upon its gas mileage. Some will based upon the amount of horsepower it has. Those are two diametrically opposed things. Higher horsepower means lower gas mileage. You can't get both. And some of your customers will like it with that. Some will not. Even within your high gas mileage guys and gals, they'll be like, some people will think that storage capacity is important, others will not. And when you're developing your product, it's important to know that. But also when developing your process. So a lot of documentation steps are non-value added by definition, right? For your external customer, for your ultimate customer. The ultimate customer doesn't really care if you signed it or dated it in the right date format. They only care if the thing is ultimately delivered. But if you forget your other external customers, your regulatory bodies, your auditors, your insurance company, well, you better have your paperwork done.
Mhm.
So that's why it's important to know that when you're doing your process mapping, because what you're trying to do in a lean analysis is you're trying to minimize your non-value added steps. So if you're only looking at this through one particular perspective, well, you would probably, in a manufacturing environment for a medical device or pharma, you would eliminate all of your documentation steps, which would be great. Be a lot more efficient. Until the FDA comes and knocks and says, where are your records? And then out come the US Marshals with a little padlock and everyone goes home and you got a problem.
So what were these numbers that you put there? Days?
Yeah, on time. So the value added time
That's
versus
the wait time, right?
it could be the wait time. It could be the time that basically that would be 15 units for the non-value added. So in your own lives, you're doing really, 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 really well. If 30% of your daily life is value added, 30% of your day you're spending doing something that you would pay yourself to do.
Again, if I whose definition?
Yours.
If I set my value added to 30%, I'm successful with my life?
Yes. Yeah, on a daily basis. If
And how I'm gonna measure it?
you know your life.
Exactly, but like, why 30? This is just
It's
subjective.
it's subjective, but what
You said it, this specification done by the client.
no, and you're the customer. So what I'm saying in that 30% number is if I were to take Anna and representative sample of other humans, and I would average what the time that it takes for them to be value added, the average would be somewhere around 30. So there'd be people like me where none of my time is value added. And then there'll be people like Dimple that their entire day is just a ray of sunshine and they love everything about it and everything is adding value to their day. And you'll probably be somewhere in the middle. But if you look at that, you'll see a distribution, which would magically be normally distributed, and the mean of that normal distribution will be somewhere around 30%.
Okay.
So you might have an absolutely great life and you would show up and do everything that you're currently doing now if no one paid you.
Mhm.
Well, then you're ahead of the game. Some of us that don't like certain aspects of our life, well, like the commute to work, that sort of thing, yeah. That's not value added.
I listened to some tapes, so
That's fine. Every person is different. This is why it's a subjective reality. But like most people think the commute to work is non-value added.
And a turn to home is not value added.
Oh, okay.
Because it takes longer time.
I'm certain that there. I'm
I'm
certain that there's many people that would say the otherwise. That the commute to work is non-value added, but the commute home, hell, that's value added because I can be home on my couch and I like my couch.
Yeah, I want to be.
But then you can think about different people on like couch time. Like some people like see that as being highly value added, and there's people like myself that think couch time is absolutely torturous, and we just sort of like start bouncing around when we're forced to sit on the couch or do nothing. Like watch a movie is like torture. Different people, different things, different value added. So some people think their ride up home, their commute home is a time for them to unpack. They listen to like Howard Stern or something, and it puts them in their happy place. Not so much for me. But what I'm saying is that on a daily basis, if 30% of your day, so there's 24 hours in a day, so about 5 hours of your day was value added, that you spend 5 hours a day doing something that you would pay yourself to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're way ahead of the game.
Yeah. So you don't like spending your time to do something that you like?
Well, there's obviously in capitalism and in most economies, there's a balance between what you want to do and what people will pay you to do.
Again, you are doing to yourself. You're paying this to yourself.
Absolutely, but I'm doing a cost-benefit analysis, and we'll see that when we get to our product charter. In the business case, is that the disutility and the utility of the money offset each other. So the disutility of doing something I don't want to do is offset by the amount of money they hand me to do the thing I don't want to do.
That's so sad.
So sad. I think it's.
They have to pay you to do something that you don't want to do. It's just, why are you even doing it in the first place?
Because they pay me.
Okay, if you find another job that they will pay you for something that you want to do.
That's a complicated question.
This will be like
That's a complicated question, and
value added.
well, that's sort of like everyone's ideal is that one of the best descriptions of having a job that you absolutely love is that you get paid to play, is that you just get to go to work and play around, and I've had those opportunities, different jobs over the time, and that is great, but there's a tension, and the sustainability of that is always an issue. And every job has certain aspects of certain transactional stuff that's just not fun. I don't think anyone likes doing paperwork. You like doing paperwork? Dimple, all she does is paperwork.
I do reports all the time. That's what I do.
But this is a key concept, that value added is anything that changes the fit, the form, or the function of a good or a service that your customer is willing to pay for. So if your customer is not willing to pay for it, it's non-value added.
But if you are the customer.
Hey, you're absolutely the customer. If you're willing to pay yourself for it or to forego an opportunity, therefore pay yourself to do it, well, it's worth it, right?
Okay.
Okay, so here's an example of putting everything together. And we see at the bottom of our value stream map, we're looking at our total lead time, so the amount of time, our total cycle time, and we're looking at in relation to our value added time. And we're seeing that our value added time, that is time that changed the fit, the form, or the function of our good or service, that our customer was willing to pay for was only 15 minutes. 15 minutes out of a total process cycle time of 68 days.
What's the 15 minutes? Then you add that. 11.
2 plus 4 plus 7 plus 2. Better equal 15. And it does. So this is actually pretty typical. So the way you would use this tool is to then look at your biggest non-value added times and try to decrease them and see those as an opportunity for improvement. So if we were to do that, we would look at our largest non-value added time, which is the 38 days at the end for shipping.
48 days.
30 days.
30,
30 days at the end for shipping. So what the tools would suggest is that's an area for opportunity. So you can improve that and improve your overall cycle time. But the funny thing about shipping is the faster you want it, the more you pay. Right?
If you're closer, then the location is expensive.
Yeah, if you're really far away, it's really expensive.
Toilet in Mexico, not in New York.
Yeah, absolutely, and or to make it in Mexico versus making it in China. So we'd see that 30 days is an area for opportunity. So if you're manufacturing in China, you have two real ways to get your container from China to the US. You can either ship it by boat, that takes 6 to 8 weeks, or you could ship it air freight and get it in like 48 hours. Which do you do? Do you ship your stuff by air freight, or do you ship it by boat? Boat takes 6 to 8 weeks.
It depends what.
It depends what it is, right?
If it will be flowers, I don't want to ship them for 6 weeks.
Yeah, if it's flowers, you don't want to ship it for 6 weeks. What if it's men's undershirts?
White one. You can do whatever. You can have a big stack of.
Yeah, the demand for men's undershirts is pretty consistent, pretty flat. But flowers, pretty perishable, right? Men's undershirts, you can probably leave them alone. They'll be perfectly fine for generations.
But not everybody buy them.
Yep. What if you're a toy manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
You're a toy manufacturer, and
Christmas
we're getting to the Christmas season, beginning of November. Oprah falls in love with your toy, brings it on her show. How are you going to ship your stuff? You're going to ship it 6 to 8 weeks via boat, or are you going to air freight the thing?
But they also have like an inventory.
Well,
It's like a seasonal thing.
well, inventory is a hard thing, right? So you need to know what level of inventory to maintain if you're going to maintain an inventory. We'll get into just in time versus in a pull system versus a push system. So inventory is generally a push system. So inventory, you have a big problem with it, right? So you have spoilages. So if you guess wrong, you end up with a lot of extra stuff on the shelf. Extra inventory, that's extra money. You generally have risk of running the risk wrong. So you made too much of the red one, and the blue one was the really popular one, even though they're functionally the same. But for some reason, people like the red one. So there's the fact that it's physically going to spoil, and it takes up space, and you need to have the capitalization to do that. So a lot of times in the toy industry, you're working on a very, very tight margins on that, and you're really projected on a certain volume. Then Oprah grabs it, and now you have this big opportunity, but you need to get it to market.
Boxes. You have milling, welding, painting, assembly, and inspection
Yep.
processes.
Yep.
What is all the other information in the box?
Yeah, so the information in the box is the scorecards, the key aspects of it, the key ways that we know that the milling process is running correctly. Time in the milling process is 74% or above, we know we're good, right? If it's less than 74%, we know there's a problem with that process.
Well, where is that defined, or the?
You need to define that.
Okay.
So that's so when you're looking at the process, you know if it's running well. It's the key metrics associated with that process. Could be the cycle time, could be the scrap rate, could be the uptime, could be the throughput. So that's where that was mentioned a couple slides ago.
Yeah, I looked at it and I couldn't match it up, so I got confused.
Yeah, identifying the common data. So this could be anything related to the process that identifies who's winning or losing. So if you watch a sporting event, they'll give you every stat about the particular player that's telling you how that player is playing that day relative to his season average, relative to his career average. Or the team.
Whatever's in this box, it comes from this one, right?
Yeah, well,
This is an example.
this is an example.
Recipes, scrap, there is a weight, there is.
Yeah,
somewhere-
it's something about the process that allows you to know, is the process running well? Is the process running bad?
Mhm.
That's
When this process is running, if this yield is like.
if the yield is less than whatever the number is. So if you want to have if generally your yield will be about 98%, you have 2% scrap rate. So if you're running at 96%, you got a problem, right?
Okay, one more time. But
So
why
yield-
4% is,
That's just my experience in most manufacturing. You have a 2% scrap rate.
that's the one. Okay.
So that's where you go into your benchmarking exercise. That's where you really understand what your process is and how you know what's running well. It's like, how do they figure out on your car, the temperature gauge, what the middle temperature is?
Mhm.
It's the same idea. So how do we know we're okay? Okay, so we talked about,
How do we know we're okay?
yeah, how do we know we're okay?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It depends on your process.
Exactly, depends on the service.
Correct. But what you're doing in your value stream map is you're trying to graphically depict that information in a way that someone looking at this can look at the map and then go on the production floor or go into your process, go to the Gemba, and be able to say, okay, it's running well today. It's not running well today. So sometimes you'll see these on big scoreboards that'll say what the production, what the critical metric is for that day. So the number of pieces that should have been produced and the number of pieces they produced that way, and it'll go red, green, yellow if it's above or below or close. Okay, so that's value stream mapping. So the idea with value stream mapping is to link a lot of information together. You want to look at your material flow, your information flow, and the metrics that allow you to determine if your process is running well. So it allows you to tell the story of your process. And what you can do from that is you can interpret areas for opportunity. So you can look at your non-value added time and look at ways of decreasing that. You can also look at loops and other things that we'll get to a little bit further on when we actually get to talk about a little bit more about lean that will also jump off of the page at you. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the theory of constraints. Have either of you read Goldratt's book? He actually has a consulting company. It's still active. He's passed away, but actually applied to work at his consulting company at one point or another. And they basically gave me a book, a reading comprehension test on his book, which is very odd. But so the idea in the theory of constraints is to look at your process as a chain and to identify the weakest link in that chain. So the process is you identify the system's constraints. So that could be your factory, your square footage in the facility, it could be the number of people, it could be your raw materials, it could be your customer demand. You're going to identify what your scarce resources are. And anything that limits the overall throughput of your process is a bottleneck.
But I don't know necessarily if I agree with you, because you made this assumption, what is the weakest link? And that's not necessarily the weakest link.
Correct, but what we're looking at here is we're defining the weakest link as the bottleneck, the thing that has the least capacity, the least throughput. So you're looking at the process that can do the fewest number of pieces per hour.
I'm thinking about the person.
So you only have a certain number of operators. Each operator can only do 10 pieces a day. So you can only do 100 pieces because you only have 10 operators.
Okay.
So then you're going to focus your resource basically on improving that constraint. So in the case of the operators, we have two options there. We can either hire more operators, or we can make those operators, instead of being able to do 10 pieces a day, to be able to make them do 11 pieces a day. But what the theory of constraints is saying is we've identified our bottleneck, and we're going to figure out how to improve it. We're either going to hire more people, or we're going to make the people that we have more efficient, because people was one of our bottlenecks.
Mm-hmm.
So then once you focus your resources, you've improved the throughput of the people from 10 to 11, then you're going to reevaluate your entire process. So now you can do 11 pieces. You can do 11 pieces. Well, now has something else become the bottleneck that has the least throughput? And then you're going to focus your resources on improving that thing that has the lowest throughput. And you're going to rinse, lather, and repeat until you have a luscious, shiny head.
You have to ask people what that.
Yes, so you're going to iterate through and keep identifying what has the least throughput, focus your resources on improving the thing with the lowest throughput, and then improve that, identify, improve, identify, improve, identify, improve, identify, improve, identify, improve, identify, improve.
Technique that is supposed to use it for this period of time, how to identify the quickest or effectively, so you would know, okay, this is really.
Well, what you're going to do is you're going to have an understanding of each step in your process, how many parts, just to keep it simple, how many parts that particular, the stamping,
Break it smaller.
yeah, how many parts per hour can the stamping process do? The stamping process can do 500. Well, how many can the milling process do? It can do 600. Well, we need to bring our capacity up in the stamping process because the milling process is an extra, has 100 units that's not being used. And that's sort of where it ties into what we're doing here in our metrics. It's what our maximum capacity is as well. We have the capacity, and that's where our utilization comes in. Also, another metric is that we have the capacity to do 600 units. We're only running 300 units. We only have a 50% utilization. We've got a lot of overhead. Well, why are we only running at 300? Well, the process ahead of us is running at 100% utilization, and they're only able to produce 100 units. Well, we got to fix that. These are why these two kind of tie together. And then we have the spaghetti diagrams. Spaghetti. So what that is it's a visual representation how people and materials move through the process. So the intention of this method is to identify how things are moving in physical space as the task is being performed. And it helps you identify bottlenecks and traffic points, those intersections where people stand around. So the process for this, and this is actually kind of fun, is identify the process to be studied and obtain a drawing of the area. Generally, you can get a CAD drawing. Then you obtain a representative operator, and this is a concept that we'll keep coming back to, what a representative operator is. Now, if you've ever been in a continuous improvement effort, you played some games with who your representative operator is. So when you're doing your benchmarking exercise, you find the slowest guy or gal you got. And you're going to use that for your benchmarking. Then after the continuous improvement activity, you're going to use your Olympian operator, the one that just is the fastest, best person ever.
Not on this production line.
Yeah, but you're going to use them at the end of the continuous improvement process. So you're going to use the slowest operator when you're benchmarking, and then you're going to use your fastest operator at the end to make everything look better. Because neither is really a representative operator. Your representative operator isn't the brand new guy or gal off the street that's their second week in the job. And it's not your Olympian operator, the guy who has been doing it for 20 years and is just the jack of all trades and can do the thing with his eyes closed. It's somewhere in the middle. It's your average Joe or Jane. So what are you going to do then? Well, then you're going to record their path as they move through the process, as they do the process. Now, there's a couple different ways of going about this, some of which will really annoy your environmental health and safety officer. Did that at American Standard and really bothered them. So that was when we tied a string, a yarn, to an operator as they moved around. And I followed them with the yarn, unfurling it, and we were taping it down as they moved around. And then the EH&S person got mad at me for making a tripping hazard because there's the string going everywhere. It's kind of cool though. So that's one way of doing it. Don't recommend that one. Another way is to follow the operator around with a clipboard and draw a line as you walk around following the operator. Kind of creepy, but works that way is actually pretty effective. A less effective way is to interview the operator as they give a narrative, as they describe what they do. I walk to the kitchen. I take out a plate. I walk to the refrigerator. I take out the meat. I walk back to the counter. I put the meat on the bread. That sort of thing. And you draw that as they're describing it. Yeah, the world's best because they're only going to describe what they remember. They're not going to remember the little side trips, the junkets that they had to do when the refrigerator, when they were out of something and they had to go walk across. So that's one way of doing it. Then there's the kind of the cool way that at some point or another someone's going to allow me to invest in, which is when you use some sort of technology. The more cool ones are the RFID tags embedded in your ID badges to be able to follow you, the operators that move around. And for some reason, people get really creeped out by that. we tried to implement that system. I proposed implementing that system at Medtronic, and the management basically said the operators would flip out if we knew where they were at every moment in time, and we could just watch as they moved around. And the reason we wanted to do that was we knew that there was a cross-contamination issue, that operators were poking their heads into the sterile field, not signing the logs that said that they walked in. But they weren't willing to do that. But it helped us in the negotiating tactics that they weren't willing to allow us to put little tracking devices on them, but they did allow us to put cameras in everywhere, so we could just physically watch them. So instead of like being able to have a data stream of where the person was standing and the coordinates, well, no, now we just have to watch the video as the person walked around. It's like, okay, going from camera 1, just walk into camera 2. Instead of just being able to see the map. Yeah. Somehow they were cool with that. So the spaghetti diagram, now you can think about why it's called a spaghetti diagram. Why is it called a spaghetti diagram? Yeah.
The yellow piece.
Is there a Polish word for spaghetti?
Macaron.
Okay. It's close.
It's not.
It's like macaroni.
No. Yeah, macaron.
It kind of sounds like it's from a similar root.
The Italians, they don't like this. But in Polish, word for pasta means something that it is like for sure, the Polish.
Hmm.
So we don't use pasta because that's what it means. Pasta toothpaste,
Mhm.
pasta to clean.
So it's more like a
As well, we
paste.
use macaron, but they don't like the word, so they don't like us to use macaron.
Interesting. Okay. So
Spaghetti is a brand, specific one.
well, it's not necessarily a brand. It's a type.
It's
It's a particular thickness,
Uh-huh.
right? And it's of a particular. It's a particular wheat that's shape. It's a shape. It's a shape. It's a length. It's a thickness, and it's a material. That's what.
I am not going there because I know they are very specific about it.
Yeah, they're very specific about it. Okay, so now what I really want you to do is the two of you just do a side-plot diagram for the taking the exam process. Like who the inputs are, who the outputs are, go through the procedure for taking the exam. I'll leave the procedure for the side-plot diagram up here. Where are you? And you're both going to do it, and you can use the whiteboard, and I'm going to sit here awkwardly.
So with all these, but then again, I don't know, do we have to use those
You don't need to
images? Or do we
No,
have-
SciPac is just list.
Oh, no.
Side-plot, you don't need to deal with the metrics. You just need the suppliers, the inputs, the process, the outputs, the customers, and just follow the procedure.
Okay, so we know what the process is. Taking the test, that's.
Well, the process is the 6 macro steps that open the marker. Good catch.
Process.
All right, and then, so it's
Costs on the end,
customer.
customer.
Right. Certain of it.
Okay, so first you've agreed to the name. That's good. So you're going to define the outputs.
Like result, your exam result.
Mhm.
Money, right? We said there's an increase in,
Mhm.
you're worth more, right?
Okay,
You just know more.
so there's more knowledge.
The better understanding of this, like I have now easiness in describing what is happening. I just kind of see the
Comfort
difference
level in the material.
understanding of and now I have this willingness to contribute because before I didn't understand.
Confidence.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's, I don't know if it's complement, it's more like a collaboration, there's a difference between cooperation and collaboration. You can see one goal, you go into that goal. It's okay.
More collaboration.
What's the one being for your future?
It's
and
us, your family, future employers.
Oh, don't give us, are we done with the outputs?
output? Oh,
Remember your waste streams and the bad stuff that happens as a result of your process. Right? You've given up.
so outputs could be something like a waste.
Yeah.
You see, now it's again like with me, I'm the analytical thinker. Like I overthink. Like I kind of like, you remember when we taking the test of doubt? Okay, maybe this is too easy. Let's think about it. Maybe this is not easy solution. Maybe we have to like kind of break it down and then overestimate everything one more time. So in this kind of overanalyze, I don't know.
But what else about taking the exam is going?
This is more like a way, because now I kind of pay attention to the things that I didn't pay attention to earlier.
Okay. But what about actual like time? Did you consume time by coming here? Money?
Is it-
Wasted money?
That's output.
Or you're gonna be cranky?
But could be more, so I don't know, I didn't actually was thinking that. I know this exam is actually more expensive than the other one, so we kind of, it is kind of money.
But that's an input.
Okay.
Money's an input. More
Whether-
money, meaning like when you get your result, you're worth
Uh-huh.
more, right? Like the green belt, it's like 12 to 15,000 more. But money to pay the exam is input.
It's an input, yep.
Okay. So what is waste on out?
You're cranky, your time.
But this is, Right.
As a result of taking the exam, are you gonna be cranky?
no, but this is doesn't work because output is, the first one is exam result.
Yep,
So
so you
how
get,
I'm gonna be crankier 10 minutes
Well,
after
it's
I
res-
finish the exam.
so the
That's
issue,
what I'm saying.
so the issue is, as a result of taking the exam, these things are gonna happen. So you're going to get
Before.
you're going to get an exam result. You are going to have more knowledge. You're going to have more money. You're going to have a
So
higher.
the more
How
knowledge
gonna
is
be
not a
cranky?
result of taking the exam, it's a result of taking this class.
Well, they're all interrelated, right? You would
Okay.
not, but for taking the exam, you wouldn't necessarily acquire the knowledge. You could have acquired the knowledge elsewhere, but part of your motivation
You're
for
validating your knowledge by taking the exam.
exactly,
So that's validation of knowledge.
yeah, validation. But I think also you're going to acquire knowledge from. Hey, you've been quoting the Greenbelt exam at me all day, so you'll definitely learn something by the process of taking the exam itself. But yeah, the validation of the knowledge on that absolutely is there. But what we're looking at in our outputs are the things that are generated as a result of doing the process.
That's why you said I'm gonna be cranky because I was.
You took a 4-hour exam, you got up early, you sat
Less
Well,
sleep.
now we have all this time that you have to spend to do something else. You have to come up with new interests to do.
Exactly. I actually had that with the bar exam. It's now over, and it's like, what do I do with myself? It's like,
You already have all the tests that's to go taking, so now what to do?
okay, so the one thing when you're doing your SciPoc diagrams, always be conscious of what your waste streams are. Is what are the negative externalities that are happening as a result of doing your process. We just as humans tend to think about only the good things that our process generates, and we forget about the waste streams, the bad stuff that
Do
happens.
we always start with output?
Yep, because those are the things that are easiest to identify. You can go walk down to wherever the process is being done and see what pops out the other end.
What do you want? Then?
It's what pops out the other end. Those are pretty easy to identify. When you start talking about the inputs, those can be a little bit harder to identify unless you really know what the outputs are. So then the next step in here is to identify the customers. So these are the people who are the consumers of the outputs. And for every output, there needs to be a customer.
Okay, so me, family, friends, employer. Maybe I will help some other businesses.
So your current employer, your future employer, absolutely. Me,
So,
No, me.
instructor,
Teacher,
Yeah.
because I'm gonna be, can we be in contact with you?
Absolutely. Many
Like,
people
how-
do.
How we gonna find you if you change your job? and you go
Because
to-
you have my Gmail address that I,
Oh, okay. Because like, can I ask you a question?
yeah, as long as it's not like,
Future,
absolutely, people do that all the time.
okay, that's cool.
And I generally answer them. If I don't answer them, I point you in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is ASQ considered a customer?
Oh, absolutely. They want your money. And they want you to do well.
And they want you to recommend some future students, like,
Yep.
you know.
So,
So our classmates too, we're
Yeah.
all
yep,
customers,
yep,
right?
yep, yep, yep.
In future classes.
Yes, and future generations of people that have to put up with me. So for validation of knowledge, that's going to be you. For mood, that's going to be you, your family, and everyone else that ever has to interact with you. Your time, that's going to be you and your family. More collaboration, that's going to be coworkers. Are they up there?
I have employers, so coworkers.
Yeah, I think those are two separate things, right? Confidence, that's going to be you, probably your family. You might actually,
So for everyone, you have to have these?
A
Yep.
customer, yeah.
at least one customer.
Oh,
Comfort level of the materials, that's probably going to be
That's
you and perhaps your coworkers and your employer. Yep. More money, more problems. So that's going to be you and your family, and probably your employer. More importantly, your future employer. Okay, so the exam result, that's going to be you, your employer, your future employer, ASQ, me, everyone. Okay, that's good. Okay. So now let's flip over to the inputs. So the inputs are everything that you need to do the process.
So
If not for
materials,
no, but not material.
like
the book, the notes, the calculator.
Time to study,
the class, this class.
class.
Yep.
We need a teacher. And 2 slides.
And you need you, right?
Family too, because you need family support,
Okay.
right? Employers too. potentially.
Yeah, if they're forking over some of the loot. Well, you need some loot, right? Is the loot up there?
No, money, I was gonna say money next.
It makes the world go round.
That's what we believe.
The exam,
Yep, you need that.
the computer, because now it's computerized.
So you need the testing center. And I guess you need a means to get to the testing center, right?
Transportation.
You can't take, if anyone takes a helicopter there, I'll be really impressed.
How much they will pay more than for the exam? You have to build the airport. Close to there.
Your identification,
Yeah, I don't recommend that you, also don't leave your bag in your car, so it can get broken into while you're taking the exam.
or at least visible.
Thanks. Anything else?
It's okay, we don't have to go that deep because
We like to do it.
we're gonna spread all people around the world.
Okay. So suppliers, these are the companies, the
Can
processes.
someone make the book? That's all, this is
So this
publisher
publisher,
or this company that make you stickers.
Well, when that's an interesting point. That's something that you generally struggle with. These is if you're buying a material from a distributor, is who's the supplier? Is it the distributor or is it the company that actually made it in the first place? So I doubt Dimple bought those directly from 3M, but she probably bought them from Staples or Stop and Shop or whatever supermarket she shopped at.
Stop and Shop.
So who's the supplier? Is it Stop and Shop
Yeah.
or is it 3M? Or,
I would say
Avery.
3M.
okay, well, they're both valid answers, and it's all a matter of your perspective.
So because he gives us a slide in the class, right? The
Mhm.
knowledge.
So I'm going to be a supplier. Hopefully.
Why you are supplying?
Because I'm providing,
But you are also into,
absolutely.
It can be both,
yeah?
because he's
I'm also a
supplying us with the
customer.
slides, he's supplying us with the knowledge.
But then as I'm actually acting with the process, I'm actually standing up here singing and dancing.
Starbucks, you know, they get in this big because we have a lot of food.
Subway,
Yeah.
Starbucks.
Okay.
So,
This is like additional cost. I don't know.
okay, so who else is a supplier of this process that provides one of the inputs? So who provides,
ASQ,
who provides time?
yourself.
Yep.
Right, that's up there.
I was going more philosophical. What is time? Where does time come from?
And then, so
You guys weren't letting me have fun.
your employer too can be a supplier if they're
Absolutely.
giving money.
Yep.
The car manufacturer or whatever transport, whoever's providing the transport,
Okay.
right?
So bus manufacturer, et cetera, train manufacturer.
So this means the customer could be also exam center.
Yep, it's going to be who is it, Praxis or whoever the.
We know that that's why the exam center.
Yep, that's
I
absolutely
think
smart.
they getting money for this.
Yeah, they get like
Oh,
$100.
yeah.
Computer exams now. Yes?
But- I want to know who the supplier of you is.
Who the supplier of you is?
Of me.
Parents.
Okay.
Are we going that deep? Let's see. Dad. Where we come from?
Well, that's what I was saying about time, and Dimple was like, "You provide time," and I'm like,
No.
I wanted to go on the more the philosophical level. And like, where did time come from? And Dimple
I know,
went,
but then
no,
So you
time's an input.
every process we have to go that deep.
Well, again, that's why it's so important at the very beginning to understand what level of abstraction you're going at. Remember the Starbucks, Brennan drinking Starbucks process? We can go all the way back to the supply chain to the farmer in Indonesia. Was that necessarily relevant to the farmer in Indonesia? We could, doesn't mean we necessarily should. As we talked about with Dimple regarding who the supplier is it Avery 3M who made the label, or is it Stop and Shop that sold it to her?
So I also put DMV because they make your
Yep, your ID.
your ID.
Or whoever's providing your ID. It could be the State Department if you're using a passport, et cetera. Okay, so let's go through each one of these. The materials, those coming from the publisher, ASQ, et cetera. The class, where's that coming from? It's coming from me. Okay, that's fine. Time,
Everybody.
yeah, it's coming from self. Okay. The instructor, where am I coming from? Coming from ASQ, that works. Self, you're coming from your parents. Family, where's your family coming from?
So so when you have input, you have to go back to the supplier
Everything,
Correct.
you have to have
connection.
Yep.
connection.
But supplier with input
Yes,
only.
correct.
The customer with output.
Exactly.
only. Okay, I get it. Because I don't know where you're going about this.
So who's the supplier of your family?
Their parents.
I guess you, right? It's the
Or
relationship.
give,
With,
yeah.
Relation.
it's the relationship with you. So I'll say you're the supplier. That's fine. Employer, where do they come from?
Employer with
Employer.
employer.
They come from themselves. They're self-actuating.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you that. Where does money come from?
ASQ, self.
I would say the Treasury Department, but the Bureau of Engraving and Printing.
Yeah, but from here, You're-
making a joke.
okay. We just want to finish today and get out of here. Your type
Yeah,
of joke.
the exam comes from ASQ. The computer comes from the testing center. The testing center comes from the testing center since Dimple like
Did I put that up there yet?
yeah,
Testing
testing
center
provider.
was a customer. Also, yes? Don't you think? No?
What's that?
Testing center is also a customer.
Yeah, they're getting some money in it. Aren't they over there?
I don't think so.
They should be over there.
Because they get more business now.
They get more money.
Yeah, nowadays have this service.
Okay. The identification comes from the. Okay, cool. So now we need to know the 5 or 6 macro steps, the 4 to 6 macro steps that translate those long list of thingies into those long list of thingies, the inputs into the outputs.
So the publisher makes the book.
Correct. But is
All
that is
of the
it?
materials.
No,
I
but we
mean,
just need
content,
the 6 steps that are the exam taking process.
registration, like.
Yeah, like registration, take the exam, get the result, register for the exam, prepare for the exam, take the exam, get the results. That level of abstraction. Actually, that sounds like a pretty good list.
register, study, attend class,
Get results. Take tests,
take
get results.
tests, and get results.
Yeah, so when you're doing in your SciPoc diagrams, you're identifying those 5 or 6 key things, and then what you're going to do is you're going to do a process map generally for each one of those individual things. So you have a process map for the process of taking the exam.
Can you show the slide you have some here?
Process maps?
So what you're saying now, those 5
So-
things.
so-
what are
so
those 5 things?
These are in the middle, these guys.
Yeah.
So they're showing 8 here. I generally think that's too many. I think it's 4 to 6. You want to get those high-level depiction of how the inputs get translated into the outputs. And then what you're doing is each one of those high-level depictions of what you're doing is going to be the basis of a process map. So you're going to zoom in another level. You're going to kind of like zoom in on it, and that's going to reveal all of the steps that you're doing inside the process of taking the exam.
Registration.
Well, inside registration, so
Try this,
like inside, yeah, exactly. So inside registration, it's going to be
get the credit card, pay for it.
bingo.
Yeah.
Fill out the little form, find the person to sign the affidavit, mail in the
I'm
affidavit.
so surprised this is not prepared. Like I noticed that again, I have to open and add my employer and another.
Exactly.
another,
Yep.
Make 10 years. Oh my God. I thought this already there.
No, I'm sorry, you gotta kill some trees. And I can tell you that it is easier than registering for the bar exam. The bar exam, you have to, in California, you have to fill out the entire thing online and then print it out and mail it to them. So it's not as bad as the bar in California. And you also don't have to send in your motor vehicle abstract for the last 10 years. You don't have to imply your employment history for the last 20 years and your residency history for the last 10 years. And
if you're 20 years old.
well, it's for the, if you don't have employment history, so then you don't have employment history. It's 20 years or 18 years old, I think is what it says. What else do you have to send in? Some states you have to send in your credit scores.
Really?
I think New Jersey is one of the states that you have to know on your credit scores. Okay, so let's take 10 minutes and come back at 8:05.
Do you want to have a break? Okay. Because
Oh, we can come back sooner, but
this is something very interesting I want to do.
okay. So we will come back in at least 5 minutes. 5 minutes at least. I'll see you in 5.
Okay, then go back.
I'm going to use the men's room. We don't have camera to go out smoking for us.
I know, that's why we have to take a 20 minute break. I want to come to the class because I'm going to Poland for anything. But you know, there is a lot of question because I already listened again, you know, and I noticed it's just too much going on. Like I heard the phone and you know someone was
My phone?
No, like someone that could be new, sometimes call me and like share something that I have no interest and I have interest in something else and he will say that but they didn't get it, you know. When you actually listen and you don't look,
When I
It is
watched the
so-
videos,
yeah, it is very good.
it sunk in. It didn't sink in the first time.
Yeah, but you know, I on the first one, I remember I had some questions I communicated with you, but then I was listening to what you were saying. It was quite well. Like sometimes because I look, it's just you know, it's just too much. You don't pay attention to it. I think it's really worth it because slides are really done.
Do.
You know what I did? I'm not very, if you do have iPhone today, you know, like you have a lot of emails. I don't know if you delete them. You
I
don't
don't
have
even
them.
have time to go
Exactly.
through my email.
So
I like
then
emails.
there are some that you delete and on some point, I don't know, I press on something and I click, and I was doing someone, and I was like, archive, but like where? So then I went somewhere else and I retrieved them back. So now I have those all that were deleted and
Which app, the mailbox app or the Gmail app?
no, you see like here, like I was, like I was, like, look, I was here, yes? And let's say I was reading. And then edit and I tried to delete something and see, I have all, and they
Yeah.
all went somewhere, who knows where.
Yeah.
So then, you see what happened. Then I click here, and there was all emails. So I click here and move them here. But again, all email 1800, now I have 1500. So I have to like go back and delete all, like some of them. But then my question is why I have these 18,000 now and only 13,000 came out? That's the question. Maybe somewhere deleted.
No, all of them may have come back, but it's just those were unread. Like some may have been read, yeah.
No, I don't think I have 13,000 on the right. But I'm just asking where are these other ones actually are.
They're hiding like a tiny criminal. Nothing is interesting. Or everything is interesting, depending on your perspective. It's all a matter of perspective.
Video link and slides for tonight. What is some other four?
Yeah, I said lesson 4.
But this is going for next week.
Yeah, it'll be going next week. You guys had articulated a desire for me to send out the slides a little bit early. So if I stay one ahead, I'm one ahead, right?
Okay, I remember.
Yep. I aim to please.
Cool.
I really do. I try to accommodate you guys. I try. So what we'll be going through today is, well, in this part of the deck is material I don't like.
Which one?
So we're going through lesson 3. This is going to deal with team dynamics.
You don't like this?
I don't really like it. It goes into more of the barriers to change, the cultural
Because
aspects.
you like to work by yourself.
I don't know necessarily that, is that I like the data to drive what's going on. And I like objective reality.
No,
And I'm not a huge fan of,
the data. You just want to have the
I like the data. I like playing with the data. I like using the data to tell a story. And I like when that story actually has a happy ending. I think the material that we'll be going over in this lesson tends to be a little bit softer, a little bit squishier, a little bit more consultant speak, and lacks some of the certain rigor that the hypothesis testing, the control charts, even the brainstorming process mapping that we've been talking about, tends to have a certain amount of rigor to it. And there's a certain robustness, there's a certain feeling of doing something that's sciencey. This tends to be more of a kumbaya, let's get together and feel warm and fuzzy about what's going on. So the first is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is the idea of what motivates people. And you've seen this, hopefully, you've heard this. At the top of the pyramid is like self-actualization. But these also overlays into more a business context. So at the physiological level, that lowest hygiene level, we talk about hygiene levels when we get to the Kano model, that's your base salary. Then you have your safety. So that's like the shelter aspect of it. So that's like your pension plan, that's your job security. That's the next important level. So you have your base salary, and then above that, you have the importance of your pension plan. Then you have the next level, you have your loving and belonging. So that's your friends in the workforce. That's feeling like you're part of a team. So that's like the Swedish part of Six Sigma. Like remembering that adage about the.
But if you know this, what your customer wants, that's what you deliver.
Yeah.
That's what makes them happy, and they come back.
Absolutely, and that's satisfying your customer, and you can do something very similar with your customer and your customer's needs and the different levels of your customer needs, and that's exactly what the Kano model does. If you remember the Kano model, you have your hygiene factors, your performance factors, and your delighters, right? And so that relates more into that. But when we're talking about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're talking about what motivates people. what motivates your teammates, what motivates your employers, what
Oh.
motivates the people that you're going to be working with on this cross-functional team that is your Six Sigma team, what drives them forward. So then there's esteem. So that's like their job title. That's when I was negotiating my contract with Medtronic, they made such a big deal that I had the principal industrial engineer title. I'm like, I don't really care. Call me Bob, just to pay me more.
I usually say yes. Call me Captain Hook. I don't care.
It's like,
But for some people, that's the they.
yeah, I get it. I understand it. I appreciate it. But it's like, if I can go to the bank and I'll say I'm a principal industrial engineer and they're like hand me more money every week, there we go. We're good.
They don't want to pay. They want to give it.
Yeah, they want to give me the title. And then there's self-actualization. So that's the sense of accomplishment, and that's really important. And some jobs provide you with that on a daily basis. You can think about the surgeon that somehow takes someone from dying and they get to live.
You think this is up to him?
I think there's a certain amount of that you can say with that, but for the surgeon's intervention. But I can say that even in my experience as an industrial engineer, that I can go walk into any supermarket or any home improvement store and be able to say, I helped make that. And that's a really cool feeling. And I think that's kind of neat. So I worked on a machine that was used to prove one of the cutting needles on the Da Vinci robotic surgeon, the first, and to my knowledge, only FDA approved robotic surgeon. And I developed a test fixture that tested one of the needles. And then that machine was used to operate on my grandfather. And I thought that was really cool. So I thought that was kind of cool. And that was like one of those self-actualization moments that was kind of like, wow, I did something kind of cool and important. Even though I was just a little piece of a much bigger puzzle, but it was that's kind of cool. Like I can go walk down the hair care product at Stop and Shop, while Dimple's buying her tabs, and go say like I helped design the packaging for that goop that's in there. Or still, when I go into a men's room, I go look at what toilets there and see if they're American Standard. I'm not as bad as some of my former coworkers that would like go crawl under to like see the stamping
Where are
marks.
they coming from?
Yeah, to see which facility made them and which operator stamped them. I'm not that bad. I just go to see if
I met a lady that she worked for Cadillac. She was in the line, and when it came time for her to buy this, she was about to retire. So it was something about getting the Cadillac with a great discount. So since she knows this process, she went to the dealer and she actually forced them to figure it out what day this Cadillac was made. Because she said it was Monday to Thursday, there was a full-time people.
Yep.
It was Friday, there was just contractor, and they were just keep it up. So when she found out that it was Thursday, she said, okay, I'm buying. You will never know.
yeah, absolutely. But that's when you do that self-actualization, that feeling of success. I'm surprised she didn't want to look for one that she'd actually worked on, because she could have had that sense of ownership, that sense of it being hers, and something that she worked on. So that's the self-actualization. So now we can go into the Herzberg's motivation hygiene theory. Basically, this is a theory that says motivation and satisfaction are interrelated. That the more satisfied you are, the more engaged you are, the more satisfied you are. And then you look at the hygiene factors. So as you are less satisfied with those hygiene, those basic things that we see from the Kano model, the less satisfied you're going to be.
The hygiene is just the
The guy who came up with it in the
okay,
60s.
because then I never heard about motivation hygiene altogether. So I said, what is it?
Yeah, so this is the whole idea about what we're talking about, what motivates people at work. And we're talking about what satisfies them, what dissatisfies them, what drives them, what motivates them, what challenges them. And then there's the hygiene factors, those things that you expect to be there. So it is driving me absolutely, positively up a wall that our Wi-Fi doesn't work here. In this office right now, the Wi-Fi does not work. And I'm working in a cube because I can't work in my office because the Wi-Fi doesn't work. That is a hygiene factor that pisses me off. Yes, Beth, that pisses me off. You can get it fixed. That would be great. So those are the motivators. Then you have the motivators. Those are the things that drive you to do a better job. So that's striving to be better than the other guy. That's striving to have the most billables, to make the best product. To getting annoyed when you go to the men's room and see that it's a Kohler product and you work for American Standard, or see someone driving a Lincoln if you build the Cadillac. The dissatisfactions. This is what happens when I get really pissed because the Wi-Fi doesn't work. Or the satisfaction correct. Satisfactors is what causes me to feel motivated, to drive me to do a better job. So yesterday I had an email exchange with an inventor where he was really happy with that I was able to encapsulate his invention in words and distill it down. He was really happy with the out product. So that was really nice, satisfier. So we can look at how those things lay out. So the motivational factors are achievement, recognition, work itself, like really enjoying. There's something about creating something out of thin air. You stare at a blank piece of paper and then a couple hours later there's something there. Or you take a piece of wood and you build something. That's kind of neat. Then it's responsibility. So that's the ownership of it. That's my thingy. I'm responsible for it. I did that. Then your motivational factors could be just to get a promotion, to be at a higher level, to get more compensation, and to just professionally and personally grow, to go on to do something different, not to stagnate. So then there's the hygiene factors. So the hygiene factors are your pay and benefits, your relationships with your coworkers, the physical environment, the Wi-Fi. So that's your supervisor not being a complete jerk. No, I'm not talking about Beth being a complete jerk. I'm talking about, actually the management team here is pretty good, but the fact that the Wi-Fi doesn't work really bothers me. And then your status, your salary, those absolutely. I've actually complained to her. This has been going on for like 6 months, and it's gotten to the point that it doesn't work at all. Well, they can let the IT department can finally wander over here and give us a new access point so we can have Wi-Fi again. Well, they'll eventually turn off the port because I use my own laptop. It's a long story, but.
Okay, cool.
So job security is a hygiene factor, right? You're going to behave differently at work if you think you're going to get fired tomorrow than if you feel you have some security that you're going to have a job for the foreseeable future. I've unfortunately worked at a couple different times in my career where the company was basically barely able to make payroll. And everyone knew that. So that's a problem when you're in a company like that. Like at American Standard, we didn't know how we were going to make payroll the next day. At Johnson Scale, we went through some pretty lean times where it was like, we don't know what we're going to do. So when you don't have that job security, it starts to really affect your motivation and your team's motivation. Okay, so now we're going into more deeper into the interrelation between how a team works. And now we're talking about the Belbin team inventory role model. And Belbin's model basically says that there's 9 team roles, that there's the plant, the resource, the investigator, the co-coordinator, the sharpener, the monitor, evaluator, the team worker, the implementer, the completer, the finisher, and the specialist.
You're the last one.
Oh, who knows? So what this is trying to do, this is a bit like this personality test you take online where everyone's honestly is some blend of all of these. But what it's suggesting is that for your team to be successful, you need all of these categories to be embodied in someone, something, and some overall shape of interactions between your people. You need to get all these 9 things there. So you have your plant. So this is the idea person. This is the big idea guy. This is the stuff that's actually kind of fun. This is when coming up with creative solutions to the problem. Then you have your resource investigator. So they're the ones that are making the contacts. They're the ones that's looking outside the organization. They're doing the external benchmarking. They're really kind of looking at the ideas that the plant comes up with and trying to figure out how feasible they are. Right, so they're doing the research. They're making the phone calls. They're looking into things. Then you have the coordinator. They're looking at who's doing what and when, how the pieces and the members of the team and the external resources are fitting together. So they're also being kind of the taskmaster on a certain level to make sure, are we hitting our goals? And we'll talk about where the goals come from and our milestones when we get to the product charter at the end of this deck. But the coordinator is the one that's kind of keeping everyone in line. So then there's the shaper. So that's the person who's cracking the whip to make sure you get there. So the coordinator and the shaper sort of have different roles. So the coordinator is making sure your overall actions are fitting into the overall framework of your goal. The shaper is just the pusher. Go faster.
So how is this so far as not me? I don't care about any of this.
Different from, I guess, the Tuckman cycle.
Well, the Tuckman cycle is basically saying that the team overall is going to go through the norming, storming, forming phase. So what this is saying is that you need someone to play this role in your team. You need someone to be more responsible for coming up with the ideas.
And maybe the team will work better if we have these elements.
And you'll actually, that's what we'll get to when you're looking at the individuals towards the end of this and how the different roles relate to each other and how you can get successful groupings based upon people who gravitate. It's just like the personality test. Yep, exactly. It's
16 of them.
Yep. So you have your monitor or evaluator. That's the person who takes a step back and likes to kind of think about things and look and react. Then you have the team worker who's trying to make everyone happy, just kind of the busy little worker bee. Then you have the implementer, the doer, the action-oriented person that takes the task and carries it out. Then the completer, the finisher, the closer. Well, you can think about this. And then you have the specialist that is highly focused on their own area of specialization and sort of doesn't really know much else. So they're the subject matter expert. So there's different roles. So there's the action-oriented roles. There's the ones that are actually like doing stuff. There's the people-oriented roles that are more managing the people. And then there's the thinking roles that are thinking about things and courses of action. And you can see how these relate into each other. And you can see kind of like those personality zodiac type signs and who goes together with who. The reason we're covering this in this body of knowledge is one of the differences between the green belt level body of knowledge and the black belt is the team management component. So at the green belt level, you're just the team member. You're just one of these people. At the black belt level, you're looking at how those people interact with each other, and you're at that additional level.
So you have to like figure it out.
Yeah, and figure out who's going to be. You have to figure out who's going to be on your team, and once you get the team, figure out how to get them to function.
And if you have the right balance, they will kind of figure it out on their own.
Exactly. That's ultimately what you want to do is you want to have a self-directed team, and that's where it sort of comes into the Tuckman cycle, right? Is when the team starts to hit their stride in the performing stage. So then we have the team responsibilities. So you have the leader. It's the first among equals, sort of the team captain.
So theoretically or practically, would the team leader has to have one of these roles? Or is the best it pulls, whatever?
It depends. Again, no one is
Who's this person supposed to be?
well.
Team maker. And the team role, responsibility. Kind of
Well, no one is.
overlooking it.
Well, it's one of those things where no one is any of these. So everyone's a blend. So part of it is if you find yourself in the team leadership position is to identify who you are, what your strengths are, and seek out complementary skills. So you don't want your entire team to be constructed entirely of plant people because you'll never get anything done. Everyone will just sit around the conference room, think about cool ideas, and they won't get it done. Whereas you have everyone that's a shaper. Remember, the shaper's the guy who's pushing it. Well, you're just going to push each other, and you're not going to go. You're going to go.
Maybe you look for your weaknesses. Try to create these.
Yeah, and that's where this sort of comes in. This is where the complementary aspect of it comes in. When you're thinking about who's going to be on your team. Again, this information I'm not super. It's not my cup of tea, but it's in the body of knowledge, so you should be familiar with it, particularly since it's not in the book.
Well, but there's going to be questions.
There potentially could be, yeah. The other thing is there could be questions on management style, and we'll loop back a little bit on those towards the end of the class if we have some time. So in the team responsibilities, you have the leader, which is kind of self-explanatory. You have the facilitator. The facilitator is generally someone outside the team that their whole job is just to encourage communication and sort of mentor, coach. They're an outside resource to the team. That's the facilitator. Then you have the team member, so that's just the member of the team. They're not necessarily, they're participating, they're trying to drive the project to completion. Then the timekeeper recorder, well, they're the ones that are going to be recording the meetings and making sure that the agendas are kept and that sort of thing.
So the team responsibilities is in the book, it's on page 39.
Yep.
But the other information.
Yep, it's not. So the team leader, well, they lead the team meetings, they direct the team activities, they ensure the productive use of the team members' time. They represent the team to management. We'll see that the team leader tends to be the black belt when we cross over to more of the Six Sigma nomenclature. Then we have the facilitator. Again, the facilitator is generally not a member of the team, but is there to sort of guide and direct the discussion. So it's kind of like what happens when you guys are doing the grouped activities. I sit over there and ask questions. Did you consider this? Did you consider your waste products when you're looking at your output? It's a person not on the team that's just sitting there kind of steering you in the right direction. Yeah, we'll get into the champion, and they're sort of looking at they're different nomenclature for slightly different things. So this is when you have a team and more general to any team. This is more general to any team. When you get into more of the champion type stuff, we're talking about in the particular Six Sigma framework when we're using the Six Sigma names. I don't like the slide that it says the law school professor asks a lot of questions and provides few answers. Unfortunately, going through law school, that was done very rarely. It was generally a guy or gal standing up in front of a group and just liking to hear himself talk or herself talk for 80 minutes with very little of what it looks like on TV. But
it was not like a solution to kill, like it was this cool movie about
How to Get Away with Murder is the.
Yeah.
No, it's nothing like that.
Oh my God, it was so cool.
It's like high school where you sit there, the teacher babbles, you take notes, they give you a question on what they babbled on.
But you like this movie?
No, I don't. I'm not a big fan of legal depictions. They tend to be raw, but there are a couple ones that are fairly good.
But I was so cool how she manipulated them.
Actually, one of the better movies out there that depicts the law is My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah, you said that last time too.
Which one? The guy who is in the how is his name?
It's Sam DeVito, right?
Danny.
Oh,
No.
It's not. Who is it? I'm awful with actors, but I was actually forced to watch it in law school, and it was very good.
Maybe it is. I don't know. I can't
Yeah, that's where the guy goes to the South to bail out his two nephews who are charged with murder. Okay, so the facilitator. The facilitator is someone outside the team that's trying to direct the team and help the team more with the tools and techniques to get them to figure out the problem themselves. They don't necessarily know the answer. They're just the helper. Then there's the team member. Well, the team member is kind of self-explanatory. Then there's the timekeeper, the recorder. Well, so it's straightforward. Okay, so there's different types of teams. So there's cross-functional teams. So most of the continuous improvement projects you'll be working on will be cross-functional teams. What does a cross-functional team mean? Well, you have people with different skill sets from different areas that are good at doing different things, but you're all coming together for some sort of common goal. So generally when you're dealing with a continuous improvement project, just in general, you need to have someone from HR on your team because at some point or another, it's going to affect people. You generally need to have someone from IT because generally the way you implement cool new stuff and making things more efficient is with technology. So you need IT on there. Very often you need maintenance or your facilities guys because you're going to be moving around the facilities stuff.
Then there's about it.
Yep. But those are generally the four people that you generally need someone from accounting or the business team to make sure that you can actually like account for your actual savings. So those are generally the group members that you generally have on your team. And when we go to our RACI charts, we'll talk about who's accountable, who's consulted, who's in the loop informed for who in your team needs to be at every meeting, that sort of thing. So that's a cross-functional team. So then you have natural work teams. So these are sort of your natural work cells, the people you generally work with that are in your same area, your same sphere as you. So then there's ad hoc teams. So these are sort of teams that are created when they're necessary. So these tend to be the continuous improvement teams that are put together for a particular project and then disbanded. So the green belts go back to their original job. So the continuous improvement team, green belts from all over the company, come together to work on a problem together. And then when the problem is gone, they go back to their regular jobs. Then this idea of a self-directed team. So this is when the teams define and determine their plan and their day-to-day activities with very little supervision. So this is really turns into the performing stage of the Tuckman cycle.
There's something very interesting here. I didn't read this yet, but I just read this Harvard pages. And at Yahoo, not Zappos, the what company is it?
Zappos, yeah, owned by eBay.
They came up with some kind of different idea that is like everybody's a leader, but there's no
Yeah, there's no
manager.
hierarchy. There's no management.
Yeah, but
Everyone's
it was a different word. Like lawsuit, something like
yeah. Zappos has actually had some trouble finding people to work in that environment because there's no hierarchy. Everyone's on the same level. There's no offices. Everything's an open floor plan.
yeah.
That works for some people. It doesn't work for others.
The guy from My Cousin Vinny is Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci.
I knew it wasn't Vinny. I just couldn't
They're
remember.
sort of kind of similar, very ethnic guys that are comedians.
I always mismatch this movie because they're all playing the same like mafia guys.
Yeah, just don't know actors.
Okay, me too.
Okay, so now we're getting back into stuff I sort of kind of like, and I think the Tuckman cycle actually
Some kind of like,
sort of kind of like. No, because the Tuckman cycle I actually see happening all the time, and I think it's sort of fascinating that it happens all the time. And I think what's so cool about the Tuckman cycle is you have a team that comes together to do something stupid for 20 minutes. They're going to go through the Tuckman cycle. You have a team that comes together and works together, or for 6 months, they're going to go through the Tuckman cycle. My law school classmates who were stuck in school for 3 years together, we went through the damn Tuckman cycle. Your romantic relationships, if you ever get to that opportunity, follow the Tuckman cycle. Your relationship with your siblings, probably on a certain level, follows the Tuckman cycle. I just think that's fascinating that you can take something that's trivial, something that's really important, something that's really short, really long, and then go through the same natural progression. I think that's kind of cool. You guys can think it's cool, not think it's cool. There, up to you.
Nicole doesn't think anything about anything. She doesn't want to know.
Dimple just wants to get the slides done. She wants to get through the exam, and she wants to go home.
wanna go home.
She wants to go home and go to sleep. There shall be no sleep.
Okay.
So what the Tuckman cycle basically says is for a team to get anything done, they need to go through these stages of team development. So in the forming stage, this is the honeymoon period. This is the stage in the team development cycle where everyone is getting to know each other. Not much work is accomplished because the team is starting to just try to understand who's on the team, why they're together, what they're supposed to be doing. Everyone's trying to please each other. No one really wants to step on anyone's toes, but no one really knows what's going on. So that's what the team members are doing. The team leadership at this point is pretty hands-on. They're directing the team. They're showing them what's going on. They're trying to inform them as to what the overall team goals are and what each individual's responsibilities are. Then you have the storming phase. So the storming phase is when each individual team member starts to develop an understanding of what the overall team's goals are and what the individual team members' responsibilities are and how those two relate to each other. And at this point, there tends to be some tension, right? Because one team member thinks that they should go left, the other team member thinks they should go right, and they collide. So at this phase, not much is accomplished because the conflict is really dominating everything. That is, listening to everyone bicker or deal with the negative interactions of humans. And that's what's happening as the team members are in the storming phase. At the leadership of the team is trying to avoid these negative behaviors. Basically, fight nice. So what they're trying to do is encourage the team to solve their own problems, stop anyone from getting a black eye, stop there from being too much destructive conflict, and move the team forward to more the norming phase. So in the norming phase, the team members are starting to be able to resolve their own conflicts. They're starting to come to an understanding. They're starting to develop a common language to be able to speak to the members of the team. They're able to come to an agreed upon plan. And as they come together, they're able to start to get some work done. As the team starts to really trust each other and understanding everyone's respective strengths and leaderships. And the role of leadership at this point is to reduce the distracted behavior. Get rid of the outside stuff, the outside nonsense, any of the lingering issues from the storming phase. They really want to become completely supportive. And they want to emphasize the team individual accountability. So the team itself is accountable for the results, and each individual is responsible for their own responsibility and overall the team success. So each one of those team members has that ownership in the process.
Question.
Yep.
If during this process, someone is going to be eliminated or added to the team, the system will depend.
Nope, then you're gonna go all the way back to the beginning. You're gonna go back to, as people come and go, you're gonna iterate through, you're gonna go back to the forming stage where the new guy or gal is gonna come in, they're gonna waggle through, they're gonna storm, they're gonna form, and then they're gonna norm. So generally anything that changes the dynamics of the team is gonna kick you all the way back to the beginning. So it could be the team refocuses itself, they come up with a new cause of action, new team member comes in, you're back in the beginning. So then we did norming and performing. Performing is the point where the synergies are realized. It's where the team really hits its stride, where everyone knows what they're supposed to do, and they do it. So a lot of work is accomplished. You've really hit your stride. This is when all the ideas come out. And at this point in time, the team leadership is less involved. What they're really trying to do is monitor the goals and keep the team accountable. And they're watching for changes. They're watching for backslides. They're watching for anything that's going to suggest that the team is no longer running at its optimal level. Then you have transitioning. So this is what, I'm sorry, this is what happens when you're done. You completed your task. Everyone goes home. So it's transitioning, so it also is rewarding and recognition. And then you go back to the beginning. What I think is so cool about this cycle is you can think about this in romantic relationships, right? You meet, you fight, get married, you have kids, get divorced.
Or maybe you jump back.
Or you drop dead. I was being optimistic for once, but thank you for reminding me that there's other ways of adjourning a relationship. Any questions on the Tuckman cycle?
No,
No.
very, very easy.
Very easy. And what I think is so cool about that is if you look at what your brainstorming thing up here at the SciPod, you went through the Tuckman cycle. Right? Dimple stood up there for a while and kind of started writing, and then it was like, what is she writing at the end? Oh, customers with the hyphen, right? And then she stood up there for a while. You came up with like 4 ideas for the output, and then you kind of stood there for a while. And then I massaged a little bit, facilitated, and then you came up with some more. Then once you got to the customers, you started to pick up some speed.
Cycle?
But the SciPod, the thing we put up there.
I know, but you said that was what cycle?
No, what I'm saying, you guys implemented the Tuckman cycle when you did that, right?
Oh, Tuckman.
The Tuckman cycle. The Tuckman cycle.
Tuckman cycle is
The norming, storming, forming.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is what was cool about that is you guys just did it. You went through that cycle as demonstrated by Dimple standing up there in the beginning and not much getting done. and then you guys kind of started off listing out the outputs. You made a little progress. Then there was a different understanding of what constituted an output, right? You might put up confidence, and there's a discussion like, is that really an output, and how does that relate? But then once you got through the customers and got to the inputs, you started to fly, right? Cool. And then you went through the suppliers. We had very little discussion in the process. Well, it just went right up there, right? So you saw that in the norming phase, not much got done. Dimple stood up there. Then in the storming phase, there was a little bit of discussion. And the performing phase, well, stuff started, you hit your stride. Stuff started to really fly and get done. Okay, now we're up to the hokiness, the hokey bit, hokum.
I don't know.
Let's synonym for hokum. Hocus pocus. So this is the Six Sigma.
Magic.
Not really the magic. The robes, the wizardry. The showmanship.
Oh, this guy.
The pageantry.
This clocks are moving.
Yes. Hopefully the clocks aren't moving on your sheet of paper.
No.
If your clocks are moving on your sheet of paper, there's something very wrong.
I wonder why. Depends how you think, what time you.
No, I think that there's a default print image for it in the animated GIF.
Why every clock has a time? Like,
I don't know.
at the same time.
I don't know. This slide was stolen from Medtronic. Okay, so in our Six Sigma team, we have at the lowest level the green belts. So that's at the tactical level. So that's the people who have a full-time job, and they have been trained in the Six Sigma toolkit to a level that they sort of can understand when someone tells them what to do. They can do it. Then there's the black belt level where they're more strategic. They're thinking about which tool do I use in which circumstance. Then you have the master black belt, where the master black belt is the sort of the master, the wizard of the actual tools. So they get to handle the hard issues, the cases where the data isn't quite normal and nothing's quite working. And the master black belt also is trying to bridge the gap between the technical Six Sigma teams and the business teams. Then you also have the process owner, who is the person who's responsible for the process that's being improved. The political champion, the champion is the person who is in the organization that's sort of evangelical, for lack of better terms, for Six Sigma. Then you have the leadership team and the deployment leader, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on those.
So what is the sponsor?
The sponsor would be analogous to the champion.
Uh-huh.
So the leadership team, well, what they're going to do is they're going to provide the overall resources. So they're going to make the resource available, and make the team members available. They're going to provide the resources for the black belts, the green belts, the funding. They're going to be the ones that are going to provide you with the framework to get stuff done. That's the leadership team. They're sort of like the owners of the baseball team. So then you have the deployment leader. So this is the person that's a little bit more responsible for the overall implementation of Six Sigma in the organization. So they're defining more the structure, the format of how this is going to look, what's it going to feel like, who's going to be in where. So it's their real responsibility to share the best practices, to coordinate the different project champions and different projects as they relate to each other, to see how a project that's being done in New Jersey relates to a project that's being done in Washington. See how those pieces go together and to make sure that the Washington team communicates with the New Jersey team. That's the role of the deployment leader, to make sure that these independent parts that are moving on their own occasionally get together and talk to each other so best practices can be exchanged. So one plant doesn't have to reinvent the wheel when the other plant has already figured out that it should be round. So then you have the role of the champion, which is like the general manager. It also could be the sponsor. So this is the project owner. So we'll see in the project charter, this is the person who is the one that's going to be signing off on it. So what they are is going to be the ones that's going to be approving the project. This is their baby. They're the ones that are out there being evangelical for the project. They got the project, now they want it to be delivered. So they're going to be removing the barriers to improvement. They're going to be conducting the product reviews, and they're going to be evaluating the project relative to the milestones that's on the timeline that's on the project charter.
So all of those people must be black belt?
No one has to be a black belt.
No, these are just the different roles in the project.
But if they don't communicate with the same.
Well, that's one of the goals of Six Sigma.
That's why you have the black belt person on there.
Yeah.
But according to this diagram, you're on the bottom.
Well, the green belt's on the bottom, right? So
if the other, you can make a circle, you know.
Yep.
I'm
So
not offended.
no. So what
You know.
you raise a very good point. Is that not everyone in your organization is going to be thoroughly versed in the tools of Six Sigma. So that's where it comes in with the master black belt becomes the liaison there. So the champion will come forward with a project that's saying, we've got this problem, we need it fixed. And the master black belt will be able to act as the translator and the liaison to explain, okay, well, this is how we're going to go about fixing this problem. We're gonna get this team together, they're gonna do these things, they're gonna give you this thing called a project charter. It's gonna explain what they're gonna do and how they're gonna do it. You're gonna look at this thing and say, hey, does that seem reasonable? Do you think this is actually going to do what you think it's going to, what they say it's going to do? You have some experience, you get it, you understand the business case, you understand that aspect of it. Does this make sense?
You said that how many percent of the sum?
30. 30% of all continuous improvement projects will be successful. 70% of all continuous improvement projects will fail.
Who's actually making this calculation?
It's actually very funny. I spent a good amount of time trying to find that number, and it circle sites where it just cites until people that cite it, and I can't get to the actual root cause of it, root citation. To the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been a thorough, exhaustive study of continuous improvement, but every practitioner I've ever met says, yeah, that's about right. And my experience has been, yeah, that's about right.
But we are doing the same.
Yeah, because the issue is that the bang for your buck is quite high. So 30% of the time, when you do it, you generate enough savings or you make enough money to cover the 70% of the time you don't make it. So it's kind of like expected outcomes, and that's what we'll get to when we talk about a reliability section, right? So if it's a 30% chance of saving $1 million, well, the expected outcome is $300,000. Because if you ran the project a million times, well, you would be successful 30% of those. We were up to the champion. Yeah, so they're the ones that are going to be the providers of the resources to do the particular project. The deployment leader and the leadership team is providing the framework for all projects everywhere. The champion is responsible for the particular project. So then you have the process owner. So that's the person who is responsible for the particular aspect of a process that's being changed. So that's your frontline manager.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yep.
So I'm just trying to understand the formatting of this slide, right? So the role of the champion, they're the project owner.
Process owner and ambassador of lean.
So they play each of these roles?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then how is the process owner, if it's somebody else?
Correct. And what it's also getting at is this idea that a lot of time your projects span multiple processes. So if you're looking at, for instance, improving a product line, that's going to span multiple different segments. So you're going to have a marketing manager, manufacturing manager, et cetera. Or if it's more of a manufacturing, you have a cutting area that has a supervisor, a stamping area that has a supervisor, painting area that has a supervisor. So the champion would be the one that's responsible for the overall everything, the macro process. So you might want to write a macro on the slide, the macro process owner. And the role of the process owner per se is the micro process owner, the particular box in your process diagram, in your SciPoc diagram.
Where is it from?
The champion, the role is for the macro. So in your SciPoc diagram, he's responsible for all 6 boxes. Whereas the process owner is only responsible for one of the 6 boxes in your SciPoc diagram.
Oh.
Did that make sense?
Oh.
Meaning that, yeah, not necessarily all 6, but the macro process, though, remembering that a process is any verb-noun combination, so you can keep zooming in on different results. You can keep zooming in for different levels of abstraction. The pesky tongue didn't want to do what the brain wanted it to do.
If you think quicker than this.
Yes, I think that's all, folks. Yes, and as I've tried to explain to you a couple of times, somehow when you're trying to think and talk and read and write at the same time, it just doesn't happen.
Like 80,000 thoughts per day.
I have no idea how many. So now we're up to the process owner. So that's the one that's responsible for a particular step. So the process owner of studying and there would be a different process owner for attending class and taking class and getting the results. They're responsible for the individual boxes. So these often become a bit of an issue when it comes to barriers to improvement. Process owners are generally looking for different things from it. They generally want to meet their production quota and don't want you there tinkering because you're going to slow the guys down. So ultimately, they're going to maintain the control plan. You're going to improve, you're going to change with and manipulate their process, and they got to live with it. But they can also be a great feeder for potential areas of improvement, for identifying problems, because they're on the front lines. They're seeing what works, what doesn't work. They can identify, hey, we're bleeding over there. Go stop it from bleeding. So they can help you and hurt you. So getting the buy-in from the process owner is always important. So then there's the role of the master black belt, which is an absolutely awful, 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 awful role to have. You get yelled at by everyone. I have not taken the exam. If someone wants to pay,
$5,000.
if someone wants to pay me the $5 grand to take it, I will gladly take it. Actually, my secretary.
Then you have to take this role.
No,
You
just
said that you don't want to have this role.
I've had the role. I just haven't had the certification.
You are just master of exam taking.
Exactly. If we want to do a class after this, and we all want to get together and spend $5,000 each and take it together, we can study for it together. Yay! It's a ridiculously expensive exam.
So what does that do for you if you have this?
You get a little piece of paper that you can put in a frame like this and put it on the wall.
Benefit is just that you have a proof that you make many projects.
Well, no, the outputs would be you get the exam results, you have more knowledge, you might get more money, you get some comfort level in the material, you have some confidence.
Training to be a master black belt?
Yeah, you have.
Or you just have to do projects?
You have to do a certain number. So for ASQ, you have to do a certain number of projects. You have to submit a portfolio. You pay a fee for the portfolio review. It's squiggly $2,000. Then, assuming your portfolio is accepted, then they let you sit for the exam. It's 5 hours, 200 questions. And then if you pass that, they let you have a sheet of paper that looks exactly like yours.
How many people so far had this? Do they have any statistics?
They do have the statistics. I don't know them. I know in the ASQ Princeton section, there's one person that's gone through it, and he had to take it twice. He failed it the first time. If someone wants to pay me the $5,000,
So he has to like take 5,000 twice?
no, it's like 2,400 for the portfolio review. He passed that, and then it's like another $2,000 thereabouts to sit for the exam. He failed it the first time. He passed, and the retake is less, so he passed it on the second time. So this is sort of an awful role that you're always getting yelled at by everyone. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to bridge the gap between the technical team, the continuous improvement team, and the business folks. And they have very competing responsibilities. So the business folks are the money keepers. So they don't want to hand out money for free. The Six Sigma team needs money to do stuff. So you very frequently in the Master Black Belt role have to go to the business folks and explain to them why to justify your expenditure for the continuous improvement teams. And very often you find yourself having to go to them and say, hey, I need this amount of money to conduct a study. And they're like, okay, how much money is that going to save us? And the honest answer is, I don't know. I don't know what the study is going to reveal. If I knew what the study was going to reveal, I wouldn't have to do the study.
I have a question of the class about this.
You can ask the question now.
Do you know anyone who can say which system, when you build something, like I'm interested to build a hotel, and now there is this idea about net zero energy and passive houses. Which system is better in the future? Like, I'm trying to kind of get this online, and it's like too much information. I don't know all these technical details, and I don't know.
I don't know either. I know a couple of people that worked in that space, but they work more in cogeneration and for that sort of thing. I don't really know. I can think about who would know that was in the industry, but I'll get back to you on that. But as it relates to going, as Dimple correctly observed with the study issue, is you don't know what the study is going to reveal until you do the study. But the business folks want to know how much money it's going to reveal. So if the study shows you the effect that you're looking for and you can fix it, well, it's going to save a fortune.
I know, but that's the same with this idea I'm having. It's like, what is it? How beneficial is it to put all these installments, and how going to be this exchange of return on investment?
Exactly.
Maybe it doesn't even, if it's going to be warm, why I'm saving it? It's like this kind of
Exactly. It's the same issue. It's sort of a chicken or the egg issue, right? So they'll only allow you to spend the money if you know how much money you're going to save. But you only know how much money you're going to save when you get the data. And you only get the data if you get the money. You only get the money if you...
Give me the money. Without this.
So exactly. So you see this lovely loop. So what ultimately, you have this faith that the project's going to work. So you say, yeah, the study is going to show me exactly what I want to know. It's going to show us that the problem is over here, and then once we know the problem's over there, we can go fix it. It's going to save us all this money.
So that, why I got this idea of thinking from the end. So I'm saying, okay, send me to someone who knows,
Mhm.
who will convince me, then I can convince you, because someone must know these answers.
Yeah, but a lot of times in science, you don't know the answer, and if you knew the answer, you would just do it.
But don't you think we need to kind of calculate it?
Well, it depends, right? So you in manufacturing or in any process, there's 100, if not thousands, of things you can tweak. Figuring out which of those 1,000 things to tweak is up to you.
And then it just works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happens in the master black belt role is a lot of times you have to go to the business folks and say the project is going to save us enough money to justify the cost of collecting the study. And then when the study shows nothing, the business folks are like, you promised us $200,000 in savings. Where's the $200,000 in savings?
And I want to invest additional 200 to get you something else.
Yeah, and you basically have exactly. You have to go to them and say, that didn't work. By the way, I need some more money for the next study. And they're like, wait, you just came to me asking for money, and I gave you the money. You said it was going to save all this money. It saved nothing. Now you want more money from me.
Yeah.
Go do another study. That's probably going to save me nothing.
Yeah.
Yes. And then
Every project is a 30% chance of success.
exactly. But that's one of the things that you have to consider, and that's when you're doing your cost analysis and say, look, we have a 30% chance of saving 200 grand. So from your budgeting perspective, yeah, our expected return is 60 grand. So if we're asking for less than 60 grand, you should give me the money. If I'm asking for more than 60 grand, you shouldn't give it to me because of that 30% success rate. So if I have a 30% chance of saving 200 grand, it's worth 60 grand to you. So if I'm looking for a 40 grand investment, give me the money. Looking for 70 grand
That's
investment.
very interesting. That's when they give you incentives, they give you 20%. Now I know why.
Well, 20% is probably from the 80-20 rule.
You have to get 80% to get 20.
That's probably from the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle. So that's one of the aspects of being a master black belt is you're bridging that gap between the technical team and the business team. Also, the role of being the master black belt is when the black belts can't figure out what the hell to do or they screwed something up, they come to you and say, can you fix it? Oops, our gauge wasn't properly calibrated and we've been running the study for 6 weeks. Can we do anything with this? Answer, generally, no.
That's one more part.
Start from the beginning. Or
This is up with the stability study.
yeah, or we goofed this up and we got this like trimodal distribution. We don't know what to do with it. What do you do with it? Well, I don't know. But that's what you get the really hard problems that the black belts can't figure out. Part of the fun part about being the master black belt role is you're responsible for the training and doing classes like this where you actually get to expand the knowledge and get to communicate with all levels of the organization. So you get to interact with the frontline operators all the way up through the C-suite. So that's kind of cool. You get to see the cradle of the grave of the organization, which is kind of cool. And you're also responsible for maintaining the project hopper. So you get to go wander around the facility and say, that doesn't work. We should fix that. Then you have the role of the black belts. So the black belts are like the team captain. So this is a full-time role where they're working on one team in one area one day, a project in another area the next day. All they're doing is looping through these continuous improvement type projects. And they have enough sophistication with the tools that they know what tool to use in what circumstance. They know which tool to use, they grab it, they use it, they tell the green belts to go do. So this is actually a pretty fun role. All you do is you go around and solve problems. It's great. So you're really the change agent. You grab the green belts as you needed. You get to actually see the results if your project succeeded, if your project failed. You kind of are removed enough from the business folks that you got the money, you just do it. Then you have the green belts. So the green belts are the part-time project guys, these and gals. These are the people who have real jobs but have been trained and familiar with the tools, techniques, and methods of Six Sigma. They don't necessarily know which tool to use in which circumstance, but they know when someone tells them to do it, they use it. If someone says to use a C chart, they know what a C chart is and know how to interpret a C chart. They won't necessarily know why they use the C chart instead of a U chart or an NP chart, what they'll have enough familiarity to know, oh, a C chart. Or they'll be able to interpret the control chart to say, oh, this point is out of control. They may not be able to investigate why the point is out of control, but they can at least flag it up as being something being wacky. They also have enough of a familiarity with the Six Sigma approach and the idea of Kaizen to constantly be looking around and say, hey, that doesn't make sense. So what they're trying to do is implement Six Sigma in their process, in their daily lives, and sort of embrace this idea of Kaizen. So the idea of making today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. Lots of words. Okay. So that's relating to the Six Sigma team. So you have the green belts at the bottom, black belts, master black belts, and then you have the other people that are around it. So you have the champion. So the champion is the person who's responsible for the overall project. So they're the process owner for the macro process. They're responsible for ultimately, they did decide the success or the failure because the project charter is going to be between the team and the champion. Then you have the leadership team that's above that, that's responsible for like the organization, that's the management, the C-suite level. And inside the C-suite level, you have the deployment leader that's looking at the portfolio of projects, so how the projects in one facility relate to the other. So that's the Six Sigma team. Any questions on that? They'd love to ask questions about that on the exam, as you saw in the
Yeah,
book.
there's always like a twist and it confuses me.
But the slides and books.
Yeah, the slot.
There was something that I didn't
It's a
know.
little
about
bit of a
that. There was
twist,
something
yeah.
that I didn't know, I remember was confusing. But on this bank practice, there is a lot of questions.
Yep. Okay. So now we're transitioning more into stuff I kind of like.
No, you don't like the first one.
I don't like Gantt charts. I just had a boss that
I know, you said that.
I had a boss that was obsessed with them, and
I always know when I work, you don't like.
Dr. James McHale was obsessed with Gantt charts.
My boss is totally
Dr. James McHale was obsessed with Gantt charts. So Gantt charts, activity network diagrams, the CPM, the PERT, which stands for Program Process or Project Evaluation Review Technique, and the PDPC, which I'm not going to point at Dimple because Dimple knows exactly what that is.
Process Decision Program Chart.
Yes, which is used for what?
Okay, it's like a tree diagram.
It's like a tree diagram and an FMEA stuck together.
Yeah.
Right? It's the contingency plans. It's if something goes wrong, I'm going to do blah. And yes, blah is the answer.
Oh, my God.
So if I'm taking the bar exam and my car gets broken into and my backpack is stolen, what am I going to do?
You pass.
We'll see. Okay, so we have Gantt charts. Let's see if we remember, what does the black line represent? I asked it last time. It's the same exact slide.
It's like the slack.
It's the slack. Yes, it's the amount of time that a particular process can be delayed before that process becomes on the critical path. Or slack or float, yes. Float, as in what floats your boat.
Time where
The process step can be delayed without it becoming along the critical path. It's defined in a couple slides. Delaying the overall project. So it's not on the critical path yet. Oh.
What is this thing?
You guys have names?
Number.
Guy who sits there.
Okay.
Girl who sits there.
No, we know her name.
I think it's Novak.
What is his name?
I think it's Novak.
Nova?
I think it's something like that. NV something. Activity network diagrams. So activity network diagrams is a way of representing a project in more two-dimensional space that makes it better, easier to understand how what processes are done in parallel, what processes are being done in series, and it does a better job of doing those parallel series relationships than the Gantt chart. Gantt chart's kind of hard to understand what's being done at the same time, what's being done at different times. The activity network diagram allows you to do that, to see that relationship. So for instance, task 3 cannot begin until both task 2 and task 5 have completed. Right? Task 3 cannot start until task 2 and task 5 are completed.
So the longest part is the 1 day.
Yeah, so the very common exam question would be, on what day can task 3 begin? Task 3. This guy.
Remember 10.
On what day does this task begin?
Remember 10.
10?
No?
So how do we get there? Well, if we go this way, 1 day, 2 days. So at the end of day 3, task 3 can begin if we based upon the bottom. Based on the top, it's at the end of day 5.
Oh, okay.
So at the end of day 5.
Don't include this for days. Begin, okay?
Yep.
Day 5.
Yep. Okay, then there's the critical path analysis. So it was developed by DuPont in the 50s. It assumes that the times are deterministic, that you know how long something is going to take before it happens, which is an interesting assumption. So the critical path is a sequence of activities which add up to the longest overall duration. And it's also the shortest possible time to complete the project. That is extremely counterintuitive. That the longest path between start and finish is the overall shortest time that the overall project can be completed. So an activity along the critical path, if that activity is delayed, it delays the overall project completion. Any delay along an activity that is not on the critical path does not affect the overall completion unless that activity's delay is so extreme that it causes that activity to then be on the critical path.
There's a question like that on the practice.
Yes, there is. And there will probably be 1 or 2 on the midterm and the final. So you've seen these examples before. So PERT is very, 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 very similar to CPM. So PERT was developed by the Navy. CPM was developed by DuPont. So one was developed by the private sector, one was developed by the Department of War, Department of Defense. But the main difference between CPM, the critical path method, and PERT is that in PERT, the times are assumed to be probabilistic. So your times are based on a weighted average of a couple different things. Your optimistic time. Your optimistic time is the best case scenario.
Different by time?
What?
What you said, different by time?
Yes, in the case of the PERT, the times are probabilistic. So it's a weighted average of guesses of how long the project will take. So it's a weighted average of the optimistic time, the pessimistic time, and the most likely time. That's how we come to how long a particular project processing step is going to take. So the optimistic time is the best case scenario. You're driving to work, there's no traffic, and you hit every light green. So that's your optimistic time. Your pessimistic time is you're driving to work, there's traffic, you hit every light red. That's your pessimistic time.
1 hour, 15 minutes.
Then there's your most likely time. So that's where you hit a mix of red and green lights. There's normal traffic. So what's that going to be? An hour and 5 minutes?
Oh, 15.
So you have an optimistic time, that's the best case scenario, the pessimistic time, the worst case scenario, and your most likely time. That's what you're going to see more likely than not. So your expected time in PERT is your optimistic time plus 4 times your most likely time plus your pessimistic time divided by 6. That's how long each individual processing step is expected to take.
But what is the forecast? I forgot.
It's just a weighted average. So they're putting into the average 4 times the most likely time. They're making that 4 times as important.
So would they, I had a question on this, would they normally in a problem give you M, or how would you calculate M?
Yeah, what they would generally do is they would generally give you your optimistic time, your most likely time, your pessimistic time, and tell you ask you what the expected time is.
What is it? Maybe-
Or what they would do in
It's not just a dash. It's something that they don't.
Oh,
In front of
the dash.
TE.
Yeah, that's just from tapping it. So what they would likely do in the black belt exam is they would give you a list of optimistic times for multiple steps, a list of pessimistic times for multiple steps, and a list of most likely times for multiple steps, and ask you to calculate out what the critical value, what the critical path was.
We have to do-
So you would have to calculate. So no, what you would have to do is you'd have to calculate out the expected time, the time expected for each of the processing steps.
You just don't.
Well, and add them together based upon the diagram they'll say. So they'll give you something that looks like this, and they'll tell you that step 1 has an optimistic time, a pessimistic time, a most likely time. Step 2 has an optimistic time, pessimistic time, a most likely time, etc. And you'll have to calculate out the time expected and then figure out what the critical path is based upon the numbers they gave you.
In 2 minutes.
Yes? That's why you need to nail the other ones, the ones that you can do really quickly. You need to do them really quickly. So you have the time for something like that. That's a relatively easy question. It's not a hard question. It just kind of it's just time consuming. Okay, now we're up to the process decision program chart. This is one of these things that doesn't quite fit in anywhere. And it appears in different places in my slides when I teach this, and I still haven't found a good home for it. I actually have become kind of happy that putting it with FMEAs, but it doesn't quite fit there perfectly. So it kind of fits in the programming chart, it kind of fits in the brainstorming, it kind of doesn't fit anywhere. So what the process precision program chart is something you should be doing in your define phase. So we're coming to the end of the define phase. And what you're trying to do is think about how your process is going to go wrong. So what are you going to do when something goes wrong? And what the process decision program chart does is in the event that something goes wrong, well, what are you going to do about it? So what goes wrong could be the project falls behind schedule. It could be that you technologically are unable to do something, supplier misdelivers, someone's absent, your car gets broken into. What am I going to do when that happens? Because what that might inform you is that you might need to have a belt and suspenders, right? If you're really concerned that your pants are going to fall down. Okay, so the procedure is you're going to obtain a tree diagram for the proposed plan. So this is what you think your solution to the problem is going to be. So you're going to come up with that tree diagram. You're going to break it into smaller, more manageable aspects of your plan. So first we're going to fix our yield rate. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to improve this process, and this process, and this process. Well, how are we going to do that? And you're going to brainstorm those out. And then you're going to come up with, what am I going to do if that idea doesn't work? If I can't improve it the way I think it's going to. And you're going to come up with measures and countermeasures. And you're going to come up with something that looks kind of like that. And then you're going to look at your countermeasures and see which ones are practical and which ones aren't. And you're going to label those. And what defines practical? Well, that could be based upon your resources. It could be based upon your time. It could be based upon your money. It could be based upon gravity. It could be based on the fact that you want to keep your job. Right? Always going hiding under the bed or living under a bridge in Seattle is always an option. It might not be a very good option, but
Unless it, I think I might do that.
well, it depends, right? If it comes back to value added. And you were giving me a hard time for suggesting that if you're doing pretty well, 30% of your day is spent doing value added activities. Ooh, we're up to an activity. So we will pick up with the activity at the beginning of next class. Are you guys going to kill me for letting you out 5 minutes early?
No, actually,
Not gonna ask for a refund? I've been holding you late every other week, so it seems easy.
Thank you. I wish I could do what you do, but I cannot do and listen to you.